Okay, we're here for the new roundtable.
Says offline.
Well, we should be online now. There might be the delay that you're looking at on your screen there. Okay, so hopefully everyone is. Yeah, you know what? Mine says top chat too. Interesting. YouTube is changing up their software here, and I think it may have affected how we were doing with our chat last time. All right, so yeah, we're here for roundtable number 58. We'll get started in just 1 second. We just wanted to test out the live stream and see how everything was looking and sounding. Anyone? It shows a few people are watching. Is anyone in the chat yet? If not, we'll have to have Peter unmute his phone.
Oh shit! I don't think I've done that.
And check that we're sounding okay. It looks like it's looking okay on my end, but it's a matter of seeing how it sounds on the other end. Okay, cool. It's looking good. So we'll go ahead and mute ourselves real quick and hit the intro and get started with roundtable number 58.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, but not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set, and blew. Child Roland to the Dark Tower came.
We are quartet, one from many. Let the palaver begin.
Hello and welcome to Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's Magnum Opus, the Dark Tower series. My name is Tad.
And I'm Peter.
And we're here for roundtable number 58. Last time we finally got through the shootout of the Leaning Tower.
Bang, bang.
For our book club series. So that's great. It feels like we'd been building to that for a while. So yeah, that if you guys are listening to those, you already know that. If not, I don't know, you may want to go check those out. They're fun. Yeah. I know some people do skip them for this reason or another, which is fine, but yeah, that's where we're at if you're keeping track and not listening to them. So yeah, we're here for roundtable. Got a couple news bits and some a lot of good emails, so we will jump right into our normal stuff. If you guys are new, we want to warn you guys about spoilers. If you have not finished the 7 primary books of the Dark Tower series, you may want to cry off this podcast and listen to our book clubs exclusively, because we don't really want to spoil you guys on things, but we don't want to really tie ourselves in of saying we don't, we're not going to talk so far beyond the series or whatever with the roundtables. The roundtables, we talk completely freely. We could spoil the comic books, the short stories, the 7 primary books, Went Through the Keyhole, whatever it might be, the movie. We'll talk about everything potentially. So yeah, if you're not finished, stick with the book club episodes. With those, we stick to with where we're at or before, nothing after. So those are kind of the safe place for people that maybe aren't finished with the series.
Yep.
So if you go any further than this, then you're at risk for spoilers. And if you're okay with that and you want to keep listening and you're not done yet, fine, but you can't blame us.
I'm okay if they blame you.
What about blame you? What if you're the one that drops the spoiler?
No, they'll still blame you. It was your idea to bring me on here, so everything is your fault, Tad. Haven't you realized this yet?
Yeah, I have realized in your mind that's definitely the case.
Well, you are the bad guy, so.
Oh man, kind of got a snappy wit there, huh?
I'm in a mood today. I gotta admit, I'm coming in hot. So,
well, that's a warning to everyone listening as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so then for next up, if you guys want to find us, like if you are listening on, like if you find us on YouTube or whatever, and you want to subscribe to us from the normal podcast service and look at our backlog further than when we were doing YouTube shows, you can do that on iTunes. You can stream our shows on Stitcher. You can basically find any podcast service we should be on. I think one of the only ones we're not really on is Spotify, because they're super picky about what podcasts they allow on their service. So
yeah, they are. I was the Rooster Teeth podcast that I listened to. They just had their 500th episode. Like 6 months ago, they were just barely allowed to get on Spotify.
Yeah,
they've been going for almost a decade, and they still have barely,
it's not even
like a hard time getting on there
for them. Yeah, it's not necessarily like a length thing as much as it's like you got to like hit all these things of like
no, that's what I'm saying.
To be like a I don't know if it's relevant is the thing that they're trying to find is relevant podcast, but like it's one of those things that they're definitely not like everyone else where they just kind of let podcasts join. So Spotify's the one area that you'd have to like forgive us for not being on, because it's not really up to us if. It's kind of up to them whether they allow a podcast on or not. So
yeah, they definitely have strict requirements. That's what I heard.
yeah, indeed. I think they're just trying to keep it like that they have the good stuff on there. I don't like in terms of like stuff that's like highly vetted or whatever. Like I'm sure like Dan Carlin and stuff has no problem getting on there. But when it comes to like which I guess I'm not really a fan of, because I don't know. What the great thing about podcasting is that everyone kind of had access to it. So I'm not really a fan of how Spotify's doing things.
Well, it's not just everyone had access to it. It's everyone could start one. I mean, look at us.
Well, that's what I mean by access. Anyone can buy some equipment and jump on and start, doing it. And I think YouTube and stuff is great, because I think they've even helped that and to helping people even further, because now it's easy to do it on YouTube versus going through some of like the services you have to go through to like host your site, host your podcast and stuff like that. So YouTube's definitely made it easier for a lot of people, I think. So yeah, and then the next thing is if you guys could be so kind as to subscribe, rate, and review us on those services, specifically iTunes. That does help us for the getting exposure on iTunes, because in the podcasting realm, iTunes is definitely the 800-pound gorilla in the room. If it seems like I want to say last time I looked, we were somewhere around 60 to 70% of our listeners come through iTunes. So it's definitely a big thing. So if you guys wanted to help out the show, that'd be the primary way to do that. Next up, if you want to look at our show notes, you can do that at darktowerpalaver.com. Again, darktowerpalaver.com is where our show notes will be. So like in this episode, I'll have the links for all the articles we're going to talk about, plus some visuals and even some videos that were shared with us if we get to them in the email section. And those will be all in the show notes. You can go on there and check those out there. And also, we want you guys to be part of the show, because if you're new here, you are part of the extended content. If you're old here, you should already know that. So Peter, what's the best way for people to join us?
Best way to reach us is through email. It's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. You can also find our social media feeds. It's facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. And follow us on the Twitter. It's @darktowerpod. That's @darktowerpod. We have shows. It's only roundtables, but it's on youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. You can check out our library going back a few episodes, not all the way back, because we initially started with just regular podcast and releasing episodes edited and everything, not live. But you can also catch live book clubs and roundtables on youtube.com/darktowerpalaver.
What's funny with that is I got a notification, like it said copyright claim, and I was like, wait, what the hell? And I looked at it, started reading it. It was one of the book club ones, and it's weird because I hadn't even like tried to publish it. But like I'm guessing that like, because like after we do a live stream, it puts it like in this hopper on my end where I could just go through and like I could edit it if I want to, or I could just hit make public. And apparently, even before I make public, apparently they still have their copyright things.
They're vetting it,
get going, because they banned that last book club episode. And it's one of those things that nobody really would have, if you weren't there live, there was no way for you to find it because I hadn't made it public yet. So it's kind of crazy to me that they're crazy little censor things are going that hard that they ban episodes that aren't even published for community I don't know what consumption, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
That's strange, but that's the nature of it. So yeah, book clubs you won't find on the live stream thing unless you join us live, but if with the roundtables, those have generally been okay. I don't think we've really had any dings on there since we've started. But I don't think we were doing the live streams like when the Behind Blue Eyes song came out, because I know we played that in its entirety. I don't know if that would have dinged us. Yeah, it's kind of hairy on YouTube, but that's your guys' way to join us. We definitely want you guys to join us. Like, I think this episode, like, the news is not super, super heavy. Of course, there's always tangents and stuff that always tend to come up, but I feel like the emails are going to be a good chunk of the show as well, which is always great. And there's some cool conversations to be had there. Like I said, maybe if we get to it, there's even someone that shared some videos with us that'll be kind of cool to talk about and stuff, and they'll be in the show notes to watch. So
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and jump into news then real quick. So there's a couple things. The first one here, this actually dropped shortly after we did our last roundtable, because it was one of those ones where I was just like, oh shit, and then the next episode we got to book club, so this will be a little bit before we talk about this. But this one is from bleedingcool.com, and it's from Rich Johnston, and the headline is exclusive, Gallery 13 grab Stephen King's Dark Tower graphic novel rights from Marvel.
Oh,
so, yeah, this is, I don't know. At first, I thought it was something a little bit bigger on my first, like, blush of the headline. But we'll kind of go through it here and talk about it. And I think it kind of reveals, you know, it's maybe not as big a deal, but it is still maybe has some potential for some cool stuff down the road here. But it starts off here by saying Gallery 13 will publish 11 graphic novels based on Stephen King's series of novels, The Dark Tower. It was announced today exclusively to Bleeding Cool by Jennifer Bergstrom, Vice President and Publisher of Gallery Books. It says Marvel Comics first published the Dark Tower series of comic books based on Stephen King's novels with Peter David, Robin Firth, and Jay Lee back in 2007. And this year, and last have spent every month liquidating backstock to retailers. And today we learned why. Marvel has lost the rights to publish the Dark Tower comic books to Simon & Schuster's graphic novel imprint Gallery 13. So that's interesting, I guess. So maybe if you're around and you have some comic book shops still around, we're losing most of ours around here, you may want to go check it out, because you might be able to find some Dark Tower stuff on liquidation potentially. Ooh. For the old stuff with the Marvel, like that was Marvel published.
Is the only one we have around us downtown now?
Possibly, because the one
we went to,
the one I knew of downtown though was the same joint as the one we went to. It was just their other location, so I don't know if they both closed.
Oh,
so.
Geez.
Yeah, I don't know if we really have a whole lot around here anymore.
They got the one at the mall right over here, but it's just not.
Although GameStop's apparently going to start selling comic books, from what I understand.
The hell, really?
Yeah, which I mean, it sounds weird, but at the same time, like, it might be a good thing, because that's a place that is nationwide. They have locations all over. Like, that would be a huge get for the comic book industry if GameStop was to put the right kind of money and backing behind that. You know, I don't know if it would be just existing stores or if they would start opening, you know, GameStop comic locations, but it would be the furthest reach that we've ever had with comic books in a very long time.
That's true.
You know, in terms of from that element of like existence, rather than being these independent places that run it and stuff,
or like the little tiny section they have at Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, the 4-foot section of all graphic novels. That's all they have. It's like,
yeah.
Wait, this is it?
Yeah.
Where do you keep Batman? He filled the whole thing.
Well, or Superman, you know, that's if you want to get.
I was going with a good superhero, not a bad one. So.
Well, you went with the one that isn't a superhero.
We've had this discussion. He's a superhero.
Superman. That's a superhero.
No.
Oh, man.
Chump is what it is.
Okay, so then it goes on here. It says the acquisition of publishing rights includes 5 prequel works focusing on Roland Deschain of Gilead's coming of age and told in chronological order, now officially titled Beginnings. And that includes The Gunslinger Born, Book 1, The Long Road Home, Book 2, Treachery, Book 3, The Fall of Gilead, Book 4, and The Battle of Jericho Hill, Book 5.
Yes.
Now, so with that, we're kind of going through those now. So those are actually, just so it's clear, all this basically is all the comic books that currently exist are transferring to a different publisher. These are comic books that have been out for a number of years. Like The Fall of Jericho Hill was actually one that was published.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Is that the one that we're doing the comic series? We're going to get to that one.
Yeah, so right now we're in Gunslinger Born. So
okay.
Basically the only thing
that sounded familiar.
The only thing that's happening here is basically this company is going to get everything that exists and start publishing them. This makes no mention whether they're actually going to start publishing new stuff or not. That's, I don't know. That's an interesting thing that I've kind of wondered about. But then it goes on and says, in the 6-part comic adaptation of the 1982 best-selling novel The Gunslinger, which includes The Journey Begins, Book 1, The Little Sisters of Eloria, Book 2, The Battle of Tull, Book 3, The Way Station, Book 4, and The Man in Black, Book 5, and The Last Shots, Book 6. Now, That's all they say that includes. I do believe that Marvel had also got into book 2 and started publishing stuff from the drawing of the 3. So the fact they're not mentioning that makes me wonder what's up with those, I guess. Like, I don't know. It's kind of weird because I feel like they were into I feel like one of the last ones that was published before it kind of got kiboshed was based on Detta. Like the second door or after, in terms of when they're on the beach with her afterwards, I believe. So
after she comes out.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why they're only listing those, the ones that cover the backstory plus book 1. I don't know why they're not looking at book 2 stuff. But I will say I don't know a ton about those because, like I think I've said before, I didn't necessarily keep up with the graphic novels when they first came out. So I could be mistaken that maybe they just skip straight to the Detta stuff, which would be weird, and skip the first part of book 2. So they may have. I don't know if they did, though. But they're not listing this stuff here, so that's interesting. And then it says, creatively overseen by Stephen King himself, these official graphic novels are illustrated by Hellshock's Jay Lee and Richard Eisenoff, plotted by longtime Dark Tower expert Robin Firth, and scripted by Hulk's Peter David. So we've talked about all that. And then now, let's see. Then it goes on and says the Gallery 13 will be publishing the beginning prequel graphic novels every 2 weeks, starting with The Gunslinger Born on August 14th, 2018, and the Gunslinger novel adaptation will publish in spring of 2019. Now, with that, I guess that is the one thing to mention. If you were like me and you missed out on it, with this being under a new label now, they're actually just basically going to be republishing these. So that gives everyone an opportunity to go to your comic book stores and buy these things under the new publisher, even though they're the same comics. You know, if you wanted to get them outside of like the omnibuses and stuff like that, you'll be able to do that. It looks like starting August 14th, which is the day that Infinity War hits home video. So,
Dis.
Yeah. So
I get it a little bit sooner.
So that goes. That's so if you want to be involved in that, or also if you're just one of those mad collectors that wants to have both versions, you know, if you already own all the hard copies, maybe you want to own the new versions with the Simon & Schuster's Gallery 13. I did look into them, and I didn't dig too deep, but it does seem like they also do their own publishing stuff for comics with Gallery 13 or graphic novels is what they listed. Now the only problem with that is if it did get into a thing where they were going to go further than these eventually, like maybe they're just going to republish these to kind of chum the waters, and then from there they can start working on their own comic series for the Dark Tower. The only problem with that I would see is that they're not going to have the same artistic talent involved, so you wouldn't have the same, like you wouldn't have Jay Lee that works, you know, at the time worked for Marvel. I don't know where he works now. He wouldn't be illustrating the thing, so they wouldn't really have the same look. And if you're a fan of comic books, you kind of know that some of these big characters that, you know, they change artists and writers, you know, fairly regularly, and suddenly you'll just, you know, be buying comics and suddenly like the look will change, or the writing will change, the storyline will change, the treatment of a character will change. So all of that stuff would be in the works, because I believe that for the most part, I think some of the tail end of the Gunslinger comic books, I believe that they did change up an artist at one point, but you know, it would be one of those things that if Gallery 13 went on and, you know, finished out book 2 and went into further things, we would probably see a fairly distinct change in style potentially. So that's something to consider. And then we got a quote here in the article. It says, "I'm delighted to see my stories in this exciting format where they can reach new readers," said Stephen King. And then one more quote here. It says, "Simon & Schuster has been the official publisher for Stephen King for 20 years now, and we're thrilled that Gallery 13 will be publishing these essential works that he and Marvel Comics originally and vividly brought to life as canonical expansions of the #1 New York Times bestseller Dark Tower novel series. Whether you're just joining Roland Deschain joining him on his brutal and epic journey into the Dark Tower, or you've already been a longtime member of his quartet, these graphic novels boldly and unforgettably capture the one-of-a-kind essence of Stephen King's Dark Tower reading experience in comic form," says Ed Schlesinger, senior editor at Gallery 13. So that's kind of, I guess, a synopsis of what's going on. And it's kind of funny because we've been dealing with the comics recently, so it's kind of funny that this is happening. And it kind of reminds me of, we covered it back in a while back when the last 4 books of the series finally moved under the same publisher as the first 4, and that's what allowed that box set to finally come out and stuff. You know, so now you actually have the comic books kind of under the same umbrella. So it's kind of cool to see it all consolidating and getting to the spot where everything that we have for Dark Tower is now kind of falling under the same umbrella, which is pretty nice. So what do you think? Do you want to, you hoping to see, I mean, I know that we're fairly like early on in our read through, but would you like to see Dark Tower comics continue on past what's been published, or?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, because you're still
just more Dark Tower is more Dark Tower. I mean,
yeah,
give it to me any format, and I'll just inject it straight into my veins. I mean, I'm a junkie, dude.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, because I know you're new to the comic book realm, so I was just curious, like, how much you're liking the medium, and would you like to experience, whether it's the same story retold through the 7 books of the series, or whether you want to see like different stories told within the universe, like, what would your interest level be in the comic books, since it's a completely different format than like the novels?
I'd be most interested in different stories. I mean, we have the books and a movie now, and we're gonna get a TV show for Wizard and Glass. So
yeah,
I would love for the comic books to start exploring some other venues. I mean, I'm really excited to get to Jericho Hill. I'm restraining myself so that my first time reading is right before we record.
Okay.
So I'm really restraining myself from reading them. I have the first one, Gunslinger Born.
Yeah.
On digital on my Kindle. Let me rephrase that. My wife's Kindle. I don't want to take something that's not mine. I'm not a thief here, Also, I don't want to get in trouble with her. She's mean sometimes. But so I'm looking, because like we've talked about before, I just got into Batman comics. I started collecting like actual comics, not digital and everything like that.
Yeah.
And I think that once I finish, I got like 5 or 6 on the want list for Batman. And then when I finish those, I think Dark Tower's next.
So that's the thing, is like with this, is now you'll be in a position where rather than look at like potentially buying the rest of them digitally, starting in August, you can just start buying and have to have the hard copies,
Yeah, it's definitely nice to have, because
add it to your collection right next to your books.
Yeah, well, no, that's the problem, is that I haven't told you my problem, have I?
What?
I'm missing 3 books.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have your copy of 6. I don't know what happened to my copy of 6. My Wolves of the Kala is gone. My Wastelands is gone, and now I'm having trouble finding my Gunslinger. My freaking second print Gunslinger I can't find. I'm starting to lose my goddamn mind.
Yeah.
Dude, I swear to God, my ghost in my house is moving shit, and I'm getting pissed.
I'm sure once you move, because you're looking to move at some point, I'm sure a lot of it will kind of flesh itself out. I'm sure it's just like things are getting tucked away in the wrong spot and whatnot.
Well, that's the thing, is I cleaned off the bookshelf for when I started collecting Batman comics. I made room for them. And then what I did is I took all my books, and I took, not Stephen King, throw it over here. Not Stephen King, throw it over here. Okay, there's my Dark Tower books, and that's when I noticed it. I was like, what the fuck are all my Dark Tower books?
So you have my book 6 from, that had to have been at least 2 years ago or more.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. The freaking...
so that's been missing for some time then. Your book 6, because you borrowed...
my book 6 been missing for a freaking decade, I swear to God.
Yeah, as I'll say, it would be a good long while, probably before we started the show, so probably a little bit 3 to 4 year range, probably.
Yeah. It's been gone for a while.
Yeah, so it sounds like you just need to get you that box set is what you need to do.
It's on my wish list on Amazon. I thought I might be getting it for Christmas last year, but I didn't.
Yeah. So
we'll see what happens this year, because the price dropped significantly now. Have you looked at it recently?
I haven't looked at it recent, no.
I have it saved on a wish list. Let me pull it up real fast and I'll...
Yeah, I haven't looked at it recently.
But
no, that is something.
When it came out, it was like $80, wasn't it?
And what did it? No, it was over 100.
Yeah.
What did it say? Did it say every 2 weeks on this article? I'm just thumbing back through, because I believe it said that it was going to be every other week. Every 2 weeks, starting August 14th. So that'll be a little bit more. A little bit easier, I guess, rather than the general thing of like maybe a comic book every week. Since it's every 2 weeks, it'll kind of give a little bit more time to prep yourself and be ready for, the new issue as it comes out, whenever it comes out. Yeah. So that'll be kind of nice. But yeah, that's what's happening. It's back under Simon & Schuster now, so that pretty much consolidates Dark Tower all under one umbrella. You got like all the 8 novels and the comic books under the same banner, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was over $100, and now it's down to $70.33 for the 8 box set.
Okay, yeah, it's not bad. That is not
for those 8 books and the way they look all nice and pretty.
Yeah, indeed. So that is that's that article. So yeah, I was just curious, like, because I feel like you have taken the comic books a little bit more than I never I don't know. Like in the past, I've never really turned you on to comic books, so I didn't know how you'd take to them necessarily. So I think you have been taken to them though. So it'll be. I did want to ask you like what your thoughts were like on the Dark Tower.
The paperback of these novels is only $69.68. $70-something one was the Kindle version. So
interesting.
Paperback's even cheaper. Oh God, there's only 5 left in stock. Order soon. I'm not falling for that this time, Amazon. You've gotten me before. I'm not doing it.
Oh man, yeah. So that's that article. Let's go on to the next one. Now the next one's a little bit more tangential to things, a little bit more Stephen King based than Dark Tower based per se. But at the same time, it's a little bit unknown how much it might be Dark Tower related. The headline, it is from Bloody Disgusting, and it is from Meredith Borders from July 13th, 2018. And the headline is Castle Rock, how the best Stephen King adaptation could be one that isn't really a Stephen King adaptation. Let's see. So Meredith, she starts off here and says, Stephen King is a state of mind. Now that's an interesting statement.
Yep.
But a good one.
An apt one.
Yeah, indeed. It says the author has written nearly 60 novels, a half a dozen nonfiction books, and hundreds of short stories. In doing so, he has built his own multiverse, one that dates back to 1974's Carrie, all the way to this summer's The Outsider. That's a rich well to draw from, and Castle Rock, the new Hulu series from Sam Shaw and Dustin Thompson, is wise to not limit itself to an adaptation of just one of those texts. Instead, we get a show inspired by Stephen King's entire world, and that just might make it the best possible on-screen version of Stephen King's story. That's definitely an interesting start to the article here, but let's go ahead and take a look at what, kind of break down her argument here and what she's saying. Now, I do want to say one of the reasons I did want to cover this is because this is the last episode that we're going to have before the show starts on Hulu. It starts on the 25th, so by the time we come back to you next time for a show, Castle Rock will be started with episode 1 at least.
Yep.
Because it's Hulu.
Hulu does week by week.
Yeah, they do week to week. Now, the thing is I will say I do know that because there was a number of some of these reviews that have hit recently, and as I was reading through them, it does sound like all these reviewers were given the first 4 episodes to watch, and that's what they base their reviews on.
How do I become one of these reviewers?
Oh man, I was going to say, and then even if we wanted to count ourselves in anything, it'd be in the Dark Tower realm. And with Dark Tower, it's if it does come to fruition, it's gonna be with Amazon, which drops all their episodes at the same time.
Yep.
So
we still haven't talked about how we're going to handle that show.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it.
It's a little ways out, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, I would say it is because we haven't heard anything on casting on anything yet. So there's still some time probably, but yeah, it is something we're going to have to think about because it's going to be interesting that the whole series will drop and we won't have that almost the week to week thing. As much as we just complained about it a minute ago with Hulu, it's at the same time like I'd probably kill to have Dark Tower week to week.
I know, just so we could be able to record. Yeah, indeed.
So Meredith goes on here and says the series takes place in King's fictional town of Castle Rock, Maine, with at least one character recognizable from from his works. In Alan Pangborn, played by Scott Glenn. Scott Glenn, you would know as Stick from Daredevil and Jack Crawford from Silence of the Lambs.
Yep.
And it says Castle Rock's former sheriff, who constant readers will remember from The Dark Half, 4 Past Midnight's The Sundog, Needful Things, and casual mentions in Bag of Bones and Gerald's Game. So there's at least some familiarity there.
Gerald's Game.
It says casual mentions of him.
Okay.
So
I was like, did I miss something? I've read The Dark Half once, and it wasn't one of those ones that necessarily grabbed me, so I never went back and revisited it.
Yeah.
So that doesn't surprise me, but Gerald's Game, I read that pretty recently, and I'm okay.
Yeah, it says casual mentions, so probably nothing too crazy. Probably just like a vague mention of him at some point.
Yeah.
Then it says, and then she kind of goes through and lists all the new characters that are unique to the show. But then she goes on after she lists them all. She lists the characters and the actor playing the characters, and I just didn't really want to go through all that for the sake of this, so I just kind of abridged it down to saying all the new characters.
If you want to read those characters and actors playing them, check out the article on Dark Tower Palaver, the show notes.
Check the show notes to get the link for the full article. Yeah. And it says and she says they all seem to be like archetypal King characters: the psychic, the tortured but good-hearted attorney, the warden with the dark secret and the grieving widow, the smart-ass neighbor, etc. But they can't claim any specific King book as their origin. So, kind of one of those things where it's like some of the characters, it sounds like, from what Meredith is saying, feel very Kingish, but not necessarily one where you're like, oh, well, they're, exactly, here's this character from this book. No, it's more of like, oh, yeah, like it's vaguely a character type that you'd expect in a Stephen King novel. So,
okay.
Then she goes on and says, and we're given an extra dose of Kingism through the casting of actors we know from other King adaptations. Sissy Spacek made her name as Carrie White in Brian De Palma's Carrie, while Castle Rock's Bill Skarsgård gained fans as Pennywise in last year's It. Which we have been aware of. We've actually talked, well, maybe we haven't talked on the show about it, but I've kind of noticed where it's like I've seen some of these headlines where it's like, oh, they cast Sissy Spacek, which played Carrie, and it's like, oh, they cast Bill Skarsgård, which is obviously like, a pretty big deal.
I did not know that.
Oh, really?
Nope.
Yeah, have you watched the trailer?
Yeah, the teaser one.
The trailer that came out like a few weeks ago?
No.
Full trailer?
God damn it.
We'll have to watch that after the show.
We'll be back in a couple minutes, guys. Just hold on for a dead air here. Play the intro on repeat. Let's watch it now.
I was about to say, in the old days before we live streamed and we were just recording, just in the room to a machine recording us, we probably would have paused and watched that trailer.
Oh, dude, that's back in the days when we shared a microphone.
Well, no,
you would lean in and talk. I would lean back.
But I mean, we haven't been live streaming that long necessarily. We had this new setup when we were still doing recordings.
No, I know. I'm just remembering like our first. what was it, like 3 episodes where we did it? With
it was probably. I think it was more. I think it was more than that. But
was
yes,
it really more? I think it was like. I don't think it was that many before you're like, fuck this. I'm getting another mic.
Yeah, that's
because that's also when you bought the board, right?
Yeah, like soundboard. Yeah, indeed. So yeah, definitely aware that they have some connections to Stephen King, other Stephen King works by way of the same actors playing, obviously different roles. Like I don't think that Bill Skarsgård is playing Pennywise the Clown, obviously.
Oh my God, if they did that. If they got permission to do that and they got Sissy Spacek to reprise her role.
To play adult Carrie.
Yeah, holy shit, dude. That would be amazing. But yeah, I'm with you. They're probably not going to do that.
As long as Kathy Bates doesn't show up, we're okay.
Yeah.
Can't trust her.
Dude, so I got a little bone to pick with you. Not with you, but, I got to vent to you, basically. So I checked last Halloween when Voodoo had their Halloween sale. Dog shit. Nothing, dude. Did you look at their sale that they had yesterday for Friday the 13th?
No.
Dude, they had every goddamn horror movie that's ever been good on sale for 50% off.
Yeah.
Dude, they had all 4 Screams in a bundle pack for $9.
Yeah.
They had Carrie. They had a Carrie 2-pack with the original and the 2013 remake for $7.
Oh, wow.
I was like, God damn it. Of course this is when I'm broke.
Yeah,
God.
I honestly never really look at. I'm more of a physical.
Yeah, I know you're a physical media kind of guy and everything, but you know me. I'm switching over to the digital age, and it was the worst. But I have good news for you.
Yeah.
Remember to talk to you about horror movies, or I should just do it now. My wife expressed interest in the classic horror movies. She wants to watch the first Nightmare on Elm Street, the first couple Friday the 13th, because she loved Halloween. So she's interested in me putting together a list. So of course I come to the master for assistance.
I think you've generally had pretty good luck with me making lists for you for horror movies.
I have had nothing but luck with you, except for the freaking creep shows.
Hey, isn't that the whole point, is to scare you with the horror movies?
True. Fair point.
Oh.
So is Castle Rock horror?
You've
seen the trailer. I haven't. I mean, fill me in.
I mean, it just feels Stephen King. It's kind of one of those things like, I don't know. It's like, it almost reminds me of like a Dairy thing where like there just seems to be something afoot. But yeah, there's some shit going on for sure. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, it's Stephen King, so I can only assume it's going to get into horror at some point. But
is there a Saint Bernard?
Yes.
Son of a bitch.
Those fanged beasts they are.
Hey, you don't slander my dogs.
Fanged beasts. Monsters. That's what they are.
No.
As someone named Tad, I can say that.
It's not spelled right.
Okay, so then Meredith goes on and says, with every adaptation of a beloved property, there's a risk of disappointment. Favorite characters don't look or act or sound the same way that they do in our minds. Budgetary constraints test the limits of our imagination, and runtime constraints make plot omissions necessary, which is obviously something that we, definitely are aware of. And the thing is, it's funny is that as I was reading this article, what came to mind to me is when we talked about this stuff when it came to the movie, leading into it plus after it, and everything that we had a lot of conversations about expectations and not to be like those super hardcore book fans where it had to be exact or it was a failure, because I feel like it's the wrong attitude to have. But basically what almost as I was reading this, I was like, man, so they've almost figured out a perfect way, because what Meredith is getting at here is that since they're not doing an adaptation, you lose all that, but you're still able to try to capture the spirit of
the King verse
of the King stuff, and it reminded me almost like Stranger Things. Like, honest to God, Stranger Things to me is as much probably as big a part of Stephen King's popularity right now, I believe, as it is.
Yeah.
The reason that people are buying up his stuff, it was super successful, and Stranger Things is one of the hottest things on TV. Now, technically, he has nothing to do with Stranger Things, but
it feels like
for reality purposes, Stephen King may as well have a co-creator role for Stranger Things.
I know, right?
It's as Stephen King-y as it gets.
So here's a thought for you then on that, along those lines, because I haven't been reading about it. I don't allow myself to have Stephen King news because Dark Tower.
Yeah,
obviously. This is going to be the first ever Stephen King multiverse introduction that is not in written form. This is going to be our first media.
Yeah, because I'm trying to remember, because I think he did some screenplays back in the day, but I want to say that all the ones that he did were
well, no, that's what I'm talking about. Screenplays. Okay, so it got adapted off of his written work.
No, I'm saying that he personally wrote a couple screenplays.
Right, but
I
still started as a written work.
Yeah, I think those may have been ones that he had written the screenplays for his own works, I believe.
Right.
I think the only thing that may come outside of what you're saying is technically Creep Show with Stephen King and George Romero working together, and that has no basis in any of his work. It was more that's
what I'm saying, is none of the stuff that he's done like that pertain to the different level of the towers is what I'm going to.
Okay, yeah, no, that's true. Yeah,
this will be the first film entry into the Kingverse. That's revolutionary to think about.
Yeah,
because
it's true.
Everything else has come from written form, whether it's him writing a screenplay, him writing a novel, a short story. We've had comic books, but film, this will be the first original Kingverse entry.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Now, unless you want to consider the fact that somewhere on some level of the tower, that Creepshow beast is lurking around.
Why? Why?
Because that's the perfect thing, isn't it?
You're a terrible person. You know that? Hashtag Tad is terrible.
Ew, that took you a little bit of time to get into that one there.
Not really. It's the first article.
Yeah, it's true. But we're a little ways into the show. It's not like the last couple times, man. You've hit them on me early, within the first 10 minutes of the show.
I had to get him out of the way. I didn't want to forget.
Oh, man. And then Meredith goes on here. She says, you can't make everybody happy with the King adaptation because everyone loves something different about his works.
Yep.
And I think that's definitely a true statement. Then she goes on and says, therein lies the wisdom of Castle Rock's loosey-goosey approach. We get the atmosphere of a King story, the quaint yet ominous small town spookiness, the depth and heights of humanity challenged by a supernatural crisis of some sort, not to mention the Easter eggs pointing to Cujo, the Shining, Dolores Claiborne, and more in every episode, but none of the baggage that comes with adapting someone's favorite book. And that I think so. That's kind of like the main thrust of it, is what it comes down to, is that so you're able to get pretty much all the pros without any of the cons by doing it this way with Castle Rock. So it's kind of interesting.
It definitely seems like a really smart idea.
Yeah, indeed. Then she goes on here and says, fan biases are diminished, expectations are moderate, minds are open, and we're able to enjoy Castle Rock as its own thing instead of a lesser version of something we love. It's a perfect solution for the constant reader with a very strong opinions about their favorite writer. It says that the series shares a producer with Lost J.J. Abrams, and there's every chance that the compelling mystery that is being developed in the first 4 episodes that I've seen will peter out into something unsatisfying conclusion. So obviously going back to like the danger is that J.J. Abrams is technically involved, and of course Lost famously is something that, you know, got people really riled up in the first couple of years, and it really just petered out into like one of the more disappointing endings in the history of television. So there is always that danger. But what her closing statement here, she says, is we're ready to love Castle Rock, and the first 4 episodes do not disappoint. So if nothing else, the first 4 episodes are good. That's with what they've seen is from the reviewers. And that is something that I didn't want to like go through like and read too many articles on here. So I just used this one as like the one, but I will say all the reviews I have seen are fairly positive on the first 4 episodes. So if nothing, even if it goes like the route of Lost, it ends up disappointing us in the end. At least we know the first 4 episodes will be legit. So can't wait to see it. With where we're at recording live, what is that? About a week and a half away when it airs.
I just checked my little TV app that I have, and I have it added there. It says 10 days.
It's the 25th when it comes out. So
it says 10 days from now, but I think it rounds down.
Yeah, so a week from today is the 21st. So then, about a half week because it'll be a midweek thing. So look forward to that, I guess, because it is definitely a level of the Tower for sure. And I am really interested to see. You know, we're going to see some Bango Skank graffiti.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to see some. A walking dude references.
Speaking of Bango Skank, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I actually forgot to write this down. I'm glad you reminded me. So we see Bango Skank in a couple books of the Dark Tower, right?
Yeah.
I've seen him in 4 and 5 so far since during my reread.
Yeah.
I'm in book 5 right now, and they saw him when they went to go visit the Rose when they went Todash. Do you consider Bango Skank a Dark Tower character or a stand character?
I think it's more Dark Tower in my mind, just because it's throughout the series
instead of just the one time in
the
stand.
Yeah, right. So I guess it's tomato in the eye of the beholder kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think anyone could interpret it their own way because the stand used it first, most likely. Because I don't remember when he shows up the first time in the Dark Tower.
Book 3.
And book 3 was
Wastelands,
late 80s, right?
When Jake
wasn't that 80? No, or was that even?
Dude, I can't remember.
90s.
I can't remember the years.
I'm blanking. So 82 is when they republished Gunslinger.
Yeah,
and then I'll have to pull it up real quick because I'm blanking. Yeah,
you
pull
that up real fast. But the first time we see Bango Skank is when Jake goes to the Manhattan Shop for the Mind, the bookstore, and then he hears the Rose, which stops the voices in his head, and he goes running. And if I remember right, it's on the board leading to it because he sees the poem that says, "Behold the turtle of enormous girth, it holds the world on it."
Yeah,
that poem, and he sees Bango Skank was here, and
okay, so it's what I was thinking. It is early 90s actually, so 91 because I knew in my head 87. That sounded for drawing 3. So 82, 87, 91. Yeah, so because that's why I was like. Late 80s, like, no, maybe it's early 90s. Yeah, no, so 1991. So, that would have definitely, the stand was definitely long established before then. So, technically, it would be a stand thing. But for me, I think of it as a Dark Tower thing, personally. But that's me. What about you?
A Dark Tower.
Yeah.
The minute little bit that he's in the stand, and I think he's there actually more than one time. I think like 3 different characters see him. Not him, but his graffiti.
Yeah.
I think that the fact that he's in New York, which is obviously not Plague New York because it's after when the plague took place, makes me believe that he exists on more than one level of the tower.
Yeah.
I honestly wouldn't.
Which should be fine though, right? Because a lot of people do. We know Jake and Eddie do for sure. We see multiple versions of them.
Even Oi does.
Yeah, but I mean, we're because
I like the idea that Bango Skank is outside. He's like a flag Roland character, but has absolutely no fucking interest in the Dark Tower whatsoever. So he just goes around to different levels of the tower, tagging it.
Yeah, there's even been times I've honestly thought maybe he's a Taheen type.
Yeah.
Some kind of creature.
One that can go between the worlds. I don't know why, but I just love the idea of him being like a Loki kind of character that's just like mischief and just like I'm going around and tagging stuff. I don't know why, but I've always liked that idea.
I will say that, like, when it comes to 11/22/63, we saw some graffito that said, what is it? Beware the Walking Dude or something like that. And God, I wish there would have been a Bango Skank one in there.
Yeah.
For the show. I mean, the show, I guess I should say. Yeah, I didn't specify that. No, in the TV show, there's an Easter egg where you see some graffiti. Then it's, I think it's Beware the Walking Dude type thing, which I do love because
you love Flag so much because you're both bad guys.
Last part incorrect, but the rest of it, yeah, you're right. No. But yeah, no, so it was cool to see that, but at the same time, there's part of me that was just like, man, Bango Skank, that would have been a little bit of a deeper cut for King fandom, I think. So, yeah, that's something that I don't know. I can't wait to see what else they might have in there. I mean, could they get some Flag stuff in there? I mean, you couldn't really do too much when it comes to it necessarily. But dude, there's just so much they can do for things. But yeah, we'll have to watch the trailer after we're done with the episode here. And yeah, I mean, we won't really have any discussion about it because by the time we meet again next, we will have both watched the episode, and
we might have discussion about that then.
Yeah, possibly. Because I think we'll have to definitely have, we have the Roland Hat watch, which I don't know if you have any updates on. But I guess what we could do is have a Dark Tower watch for Castle Rock. What we could do is have just a small segment and just see if there's anything in there. And what we can do is even open that up to the listeners if you guys want to email in and let us know, oh, yeah, I noticed this because, we might miss something. Just shoot emails to us, like, hey, in this episode they said this, or I saw this, and we can kind of go in and look into that and make sure we root out all Dark Tower things there in Castle Rock.
Find them all.
Yes, find every one of them. Just find it like Waldo and Carmen Sandiego.
If those two had a kid, we'd never find it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Probably be an invisible person.
It's the Invisible Man. I found his origin story.
Okay, so that's it for the main part of the news. Now there is the one thing that I wanted to bring up. So I don't know if you even know about this, or not. Do you?
Oh wait, the stand map?
Yes.
I read that wrong. Yeah, the stand map. No, I don't know about this. What's going on?
He made a map for the stand,
for everyone's journey across America and everything. That's awesome.
Well, let's go ahead and take a look here. So, Chris in Australia did an awesome thing here. He basically made a map for the stand and everyone's journey in it. He did also tweet me asking about, just kind of looking at it for any mistakes that there might be. I guess some people have already found some. I mean, it's a huge book, so definitely don't begrudge him on that. And the only one that I found, and I told him the reason I was able to find it so easily is because it's a hometown thing. Patient Zero comes through Salt Lake City, and his map doesn't reflect that.
He does,
but he does come through there because for me that was always one of those well, fuck, we're
fucked.
We're screwed because if he would have went the route that Chris's map here shows, you and I might have a chance. Maybe we might have a chance to bug out before.
So what you're saying is there's a chance.
Yeah, but since he's stops in Salt Lake City, and that's when his family starts getting sick. It's chances are we'd end up getting sick before we even realized anything was going on. Unless we were, of course, one of the chosen ones. You having dreams about Las Vegas, me having dreams about Hemingford Home and whatnot.
I don't die, you do.
But no, I think this is incredible, though. I don't know, just a great thing to see everyone's journey. You got the hero up there on the top there in the black flag. Starting up there in Boulder. Got Randall Flagg up there, doing his thing. No, but it's really cool. Then it zooms in on New England as you get all the people up there obviously doing their thing. But no, it's just a really cool thing. I think it'd be awesome to have something like this to look through and just kind of follow. And also, one of the main things to look at there is right over Missouri. There's a little bubble there that says Roland, Jake, Eddie, Susanna, and Oi.
Yeah.
Because they do indeed pop in.
To that when and where.
Yeah, not in the stand necessarily. We don't see them in the stand, but we see them in their book in the stand's world. That's right. So if nothing else, we could bring this up on this show. I mean, we're always going to because it's Chris and he does awesome work. But yeah, indeed, he does include our quartet showing up in the middle of Kansas. Topeka. Yeah, no, so it's pretty cool. Peter, you're just
I'm reading all the small little print here. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no, it just made me laugh. Then you got you got everyone. Larry, Stu, You got Lloyd down there, Poke. It's pretty great, pretty cool.
It really puts into perspective how far some people traveled. Like thinking about Nick going from Arkansas to into Oklahoma by himself.
Yeah.
On a bicycle.
Yeah.
Like, looking at that really just kind of sticks out to me. And like the rest, motorcycles and cars and everything like that. But he rode a bicycle.
Yeah.
Into Oklahoma from Arkansas.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never really honestly considered it. I don't think I've ever considered like the actual journeys with an actual map before. I think it's always just been one of those you just kind of in your head, you're just like, oh, well, I vaguely know where those states are, like, and maybe their approximate location. And I think because of that, you may actually kind of short them on some of their journeys in some cases. But yeah, it's kind of a cool thing to look at here and see where everyone is, where they go, where they end up, and yeah, pretty awesome. Great work for Chris. And
wait a minute, where's Fran and Harold meeting Stu?
Would it be in the smaller box?
That's what I'm looking for. Do you see it?
Now that may have been one of the ones because he tweeted at me asking me to look it over and see if I could find any mistakes, and he did mention them, but I can't remember the context of what he said about them. Maybe it is that missing part because do they meet them in Stovington? Or they do because he tells them I'm not going back in there, they meet him
past Stovington.
They meet him somewhere else
it's
because they argue about
he's going to the coast and they're coming from the coast
because they end up arguing about whether they want to go that direction, but he does end up going with them, but then he refuses to go in the building, obviously. So they don't meet in Stovington, but they definitely meet and then get to Stovington. So yeah, that's it's pretty awesome though. Great work to Chris, and we'll have the links in the show notes, a picture of it, and also the links to everything, all of his his website and everything else to take a look and read and follow.
This is a rough draft. This isn't available for purchase yet, right?
That I don't recall if it is or not. Either way, I think he might be fixing it because, like I said, with him tweeting me about checking for mistakes, I'm guessing it may not be ready for sell yet. But I did not. I don't recall because I think I did look, but I can't remember if I looked that deeply enough to see if it was for sale or not. But
one thing,
I think I was too giddy about the map itself, and I ended up getting kind of lost in it.
Have you started the stand yet or not?
No, I'm waiting until because we've
start the stand. You're fine. We'll do the outsider when we get there. I'm gonna brush up on it because it's been a while for me. I've read
I think
Wizard and Glass in between. So
yeah, I was thinking I might brush up on it too, but I want to do that and then record that though, because otherwise we'll end up having to both probably just reread the damn book before we discuss it again. Yeah, that's the reason I'm also reading some other non-King books as well, okay. And I also think that Hardcore History is about to drop an episode. So
are they?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So when it comes to that kind of thing, and I think I have at least one Audible credit chilling, so I don't know. I definitely can. Oh. Well, I actually already own the stand, but yeah.
While we're talking about journeys, and I just mentioned it, I finished The Long Walk, guys. I don't know if I said that.
I think you did last time.
Did I?
Maybe.
I don't think I finished it before last time, but I might have.
Okay.
But last time was a book club anyway, so some people don't tune in for those. So
yeah,
I did finish The Long Walk. I enjoyed it thoroughly. The ending, I think I may need to go back and listen to the last 20 minutes again. I listened to it as I was going to bed one night, and I may or may not have dozed off.
Yeah.
I was trying to stay awake. I'm pretty sure I stayed awake, but the ending was definitely a unique one for King. So
yeah,
I need to go back and double check it. But no, if anyone wants to fact check this for me, that is a stand fan, I think Stu's leg break happened further into Utah. But I may be wrong.
Where the collapsed bridge is at?
Yeah, the washout.
See, the problem is a lot of it is not super defined, and he does use a lot of fake towns in Utah.
He does.
I think it's what is it, like Gunshot, Utah, or some weird towny events?
The thing is that you could figure it out, though, where it is in Utah, because we talk about how far Tom comes out of Vegas to find him, and also how many days they've been traveling with how many miles, because there's the one right before the washout where Larry tells him how far they've gone.
Where does it show him going down?
Just right next to where it says Sego, Sego.
Okay. And where?
Looks right next to the. Hold on. Let me do this.
Okay. And you're thinking it's further into Utah?
I think it's further down because he sees the nuclear blast.
Oh, okay.
And everything like that. So it just makes me think that it's further southern Utah.
Well, that is pretty far in southern Utah, though, with where that's at.
No, because it's pointing back towards Sega, which is right next to the Colorado border. Seems a little far. I'm a lot familiar with that area right there where they walk down I-70. I've traveled that road quite frequently.
But I-70 goes east-west and doesn't go down that far, does it?
No, it goes across I-15 and then goes down. So what you're seeing here is he's saying that he broke his leg before they even got to I-15. So that tells me that that's way too far north to be seeing a nuclear, maybe to be seeing a nuclear. I don't know. How far is a nuclear blast visible?
I can't even. It would be a matter of what kind of megaton you're talking about here.
Is it a dirty bomb? Hey, Todd, is it a dirty bomb?
Yeah, I'll have to go through it. And honestly, like I was thinking, I'm definitely going to keep an eye on it as I go through and read The Stand, which I might be starting sooner rather tin later. It is that time of year. So
that one and Stu are the only two that I see. If you want to pass those along to Chris for me.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll listen to the episode in here as well.
Chris, how you doing? Excellent work, though.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, really good. Really cool. Kind of cool to see where everyone starts off and stuff, too. Kind of interesting.
I love the different
see how
colors.
it's like dispersed and stuff, see where everyone kind of starts off or whatever.
It's the bends of the rainbow.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, the most powerful one there.
The most evil one, Black 13. See?
Oh, you always have to go with
and look, Patient Zero's the pink one, the evil one. See? All things serve the beam, sir.
Oh, Campion. Why didn't he go further south? Why did he have to come to Salt Lake?
Why didn't he just stay in the barracks? I mean, not the barracks, the test facility.
Because he wanted to get away from it.
They would have been. His wife and daughter would have lived if he had stayed.
No, I think the base is too close. Because remember, they had to speed out of the gate that would have locked them in.
The only reason is because he got out. He was infected. If he had stayed in, there would have been no infection.
It's tough to say.
No, that's why he's called Patient Zero. It was contained. They know that. The general says that.
Patient Zero is there's actually a cool behind the scenes of like the whole thing there. But Patient Zero, the way it's used now, means the person that starts an outbreak.
Right. So if he had never got out, if the door hadn't malfunctioned and it had closed,
I think his family still would have got.
There would have been no outbreak.
No, but I think his family still would have got.
But there would have the rest of the world wouldn't have died.
Yeah, but from his perspective, he's trying to save his family from said disease and get away.
They still died from the disease.
Yeah, but he's going to be the hopeless optimist and think, oh, we're not infected. We got to get away as far away as possible. Like, he doesn't sit there thinking, oh, like, we're, whatever. And by the time they start showing the symptoms and stuff, like, at that point, he's probably too delirious to be like, oh, maybe I should, like, stop and go out in the desert and shoot myself. Like, no, it's paranoia, whatever. Maybe Randall Flagg is playing some strings there.
Oh, I know he is. It's never been confirmed for me, but that door malfunctioning is absolutely Flagg's fault.
Yeah.
I 1,000% think that.
Because you want to blame Flagg for it all.
But we're starting to get a little spoily for The Stand here.
It's all the opening pages.
Fair point. Fair point.
Because that's even before
except for the part where I talked about the nuke going off.
It's before the title page even. The Campion stuff is all before you even see this. Because like the first chapter is the gas station, so the Campion stuff is like a prologue.
It happens before it.
What?
The Campion stuff happens
before the title page. It's like a prologue.
Is it really?
Yeah, because chapter 1, like word 1, is like talking about Hap's station, and then like them like Campion showing up. So like, yeah, his whole thing is like an 100% intro to it all. But we may have, I don't know, whatever. Everyone read The Stand. It's great. So yeah, there's the map. So check that out. And that is it for news. So we will go ahead and next up we will go to
emails. It's the emails. Tad's gonna read us what people wrote to us. God, that sounds
that's not getting deleted, right?
God damn it. That sounds even worse than these new headphones that you got me. That's like the stereo, like the studio headphones. It
Yeah.
sounds like even more of a jackass.
Peter got an upgraded headphone for the studio here, and so that he's hearing through new ears now. But that's gotta love it, man. I love the email jingle, and we of course say thank you side to Peter for making an ass out of himself for the sake of the show.
It's what I live for, honestly, is to make an ass out of myself for pure entertainment. That's why I had a kid. Now I have someone that can just laugh at me whenever I do something stupid.
Okay, so first up for emails is Jennifer from Milwaukee emailing again. And she's emailed a few different times now. And she starts off and says, I assume about 85 people have sent you this correction, so feel free to skip it. And I don't believe that anyone has. We don't have a lot of people necessarily that send in corrections. I'm not saying those things aren't welcome, because they definitely are. But we definitely don't, I don't know if we've ever really had one where, we've said something that has, that has caused a huge ripple of, emails of oh, you got that wrong. We've had
not a huge.
We've had stuff mentioned, but
Cuthbert was one I remember. Cuthbert.
Oh yeah, that comes up, but that's not really a mistake. That's just how do you say it, tomato type thing.
Seriously, they say it differently from book 4 to book 5. I'm not even kidding.
Well, probably because you change narrators.
I always forget that.
Yeah, you go to George Guidell by book 5.
That's true.
So yeah, book 4 is his last hurrah. So yeah, no, it's definitely one of those things too that I feel like it's one of those ones that people are super opinionated on. They say it one way, so if you say it the other way, they're just that's the wrong way. Say it the other way.
I saw a white and blue dress. No, a yellow and green dress.
Although I'll say that with Shimi, with the way he's laughing about trying to say it, I believe that proves that Cuthbert is the right way to say it.
Cuthbert.
Yeah.
Cuthbert. You're right.
Yeah, I think that's the proof from King's, in terms of because he inserts it into the story to show how it's being pronounced. But
gotcha.
In my opinion, but that was more of a recent discovery, I think.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's when they reveal themselves to Shimi and Cuthbert.
Yeah.
Cuthbert.
And he laughs about the pronunciation of it, so it makes me think that Cuthbert is the right way. But if we have Cuthbert folks, you're welcome here too. And I don't know. I think
I still let it slip Cuthbert a couple
because I think I've said Cuthbert early on mostly. So there might be times I revert and say that way as well. But
we won't shame you too bad, Tad. Don't worry. 10 lashes for every Cuthbert. No, I'm just kidding.
And then Jennifer goes on, says The Long Walk is one of King's early books, published just after The Stand in 1979. It's only the second book published as Bachman. He got through 4 or 5, I think, before he was outed in 1985. Yeah, so I believe that was when we were just kind of vaguely talking about where books lined up in the timeline, and I didn't pull up my list. And I think we had mentioned that Long Walk was in the 90s, I think.
I thought it was in the 90s. Thank you, Jennifer. That corrects me. Oh, I'm glad. I still thought it was in the 90s until now.
Oh yeah. Well, no, yeah. If it's a Bachman novel, I think that was what was screwing me up. Is I think I was forgetting that was a Bachman novel. I don't think I keep those cordoned off in my head as much, just because whatever, it's all King, and and I think because Bachman, that was upset by the 80s. That was already a done thing.
Oh, I thought it was the 90s that he wrote as Richard Bachman.
No, no, it was at that height of everything, when King was
the golden age of King.
Yeah, when he was the hottest property in Hollywood, which I think now is the second time that's happened to him. Yeah. And everything God, I just read one today when I was doing some last minute show prep. The people that wrote A Quiet Place are doing one of his short stories.
Oh, really?
As well. So yeah,
wow.
It's just man, anything with King's name on it, people are looking to adapt.
Yeah.
So so it was during that period, and I think it was one of those things do the Richard Bachman stuff. It allowed him to do different genres and stuff, and get around the whole thing. Because what was the thing? I think he wrote it in his on writing book that he was basically being limited with how much he could publish per year. Yeah. And it was just one of those things that he wanted to publish more, so publish it under a different name. I think it's mistakenly. I don't think that it had a whole lot to do with let me see if my stuff will sell without my name on it. I think that was another author, and it just gets transposed onto Stephen King in the Bachman realm. I'm
going to disagree, because in the Long Walk intro, he goes into it a little bit, talking about why he wrote under Richard Bachman, and he kind of goes into that a large part of it was not only that Bachman was a separate person from him, but he had separate ideas of how a story should go. Yeah. And he had to get those out there somehow and see if they would sell. is basically not word for word how he said it, and feel free to correct me, guys.
Well, like I said,
But-
I haven't read that necessarily, but I've
Yeah.
read like on the on writing, and I believe he spells out where they're just like, I was given this many books per year, and that just wasn't enough. So
That may have been the start, but the thing that he goes into in the long walk is saying that when he started as Bachman, it started off as I think he said it started off as a numbers thing, so maybe that's what he's talking about there.
Yeah.
But then it developed into Bachman was his Jekyll and Hyde. He had King,
totally.
He had King
Totally.
and Bachman.
Totally.
And Bachman became
And I think
this one where he had to write as him.
And I think you see that because even like I think his intro to Misery, he said he almost made Misery a Bachman book because it wasn't really your average King thing. It didn't have the supernatural element. Obviously it was horror, but like that one easily could have been pushed out as a Bachman novel, and it probably would have been okay. I don't think people would have like. People wouldn't have necessarily went like, oh, that's Stephen King. Like it has its horror elements, but it was like super grounded and stuff.
Yeah.
So like the fact that he had that debate makes me think that for sure he wanted. I'm not like downplaying like the stylistic thing, but like I think there's like it was either another author, maybe it's even a musician that thought to themselves that let's see if I could do some stuff under a completely different name and see if it would still sell. And I think that gets transposed into like why Bachman happened, and I don't think that was like the main thrust of why it happened.
Gotcha.
Now I think that like. Once he decided to do it, he was probably like, now I'm doing this. I could do different styles, and I wonder if it would sell. Like, but I don't think there was like, fuck, I wonder if I could sell with it. It's probably more of just like, again, it's even semantics, but I think it's like,
I get you.
Primarily from on writing, if I remember it correctly, it was just like, which is weird to me. Like, we're talking about like the 80s, like, so you're not talking about like paper shortages. Like, why in God's name would a publisher slow a guy like King down? You know what I mean? Like, he's the hottest property. Like, freaking movies are coming out like crazy. Why in God's name, if you're running a publishing firm, would you be like, hey, we're going to limit you to X number of books a year?
Well, if you look at it in the strictly like money sense, if you put out 15 books, but the average American only reads 6, well, okay, so you're putting out 9 extra books that people aren't going to buy, or you spread it out too much that you're not going to make as much money.
Possibly.
If you make King put them in a vault and release 6 every year, at max potential, where people are crying for more every year, then you keep it not only longevity, you also keep it to where you're selling out every single book every single time. But if you saturate the market, we all know what supply and demand is.
I suppose that's true, but
that's where I think they came from. I could see where the execs came from with that. Is like, oh, we got to bleed this guy dry as much as we can.
Possibly, because it's like I think of like Lord of the Rings. Like they made Tolkien split that book up into 3 books because paper was expensive in the 50s and stuff. So it was one of those things like it wasn't feasible to have a 1,000-page book in those days. And it's just one of those things where I'm just like, I use that and I was transposing to King. Like, is that the reason? But I'm like, no, it's the 1980s for God's sake. Like, it's not like there was like a paper shortage.
Right.
But yeah, no,
I think it's more just the financial gain was someone looked at it and went, yeah, if we take this guy and hook him up to this machine and have him churning out X amount of books every year instead of Y amount of books, we're going to make A amount of money instead of B amount of money, and A is a lot bigger than B.
Yeah.
If they make it go long.
Yeah, that's possible. And I honestly wonder if you'd almost even wonder about people questioning whether it's possible for him to write that many books and maybe start to doubt that he's even doing his own writing.
That they have 5 novels coming out from 5 different authors, but they're all saying Stephen King.
Yeah, exactly.
Companies have been busted doing that before, haven't they?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a few big name authors that do that openly. It's not even like a hidden thing. It's just like, oh no, that's what it is. This is the brand, and the name's more of a brand than anything else. And it's just like writing a certain style that fits that person's name, but not necessarily written by that person.
Ow.
So yeah, that's thank you, Jennifer, for that correction on Long Walk.
Thank you, sir.
And she says, Desperation and the Regulators were in the 90s, as I recall. That was a weird experiment. He published one as King and one as Bachman. They used the same set of characters, character names, and it had a similar origin of the evil force. They weren't really a series, though. They were just connected in an odd manner. For instance, the main protagonist's family of Desperation is in the Regulators, but the kids are now the parents and vice versa. The characters themselves, for the most part, are completely different as well. I always wondered if he was saying something about the levels of the tower with those 2 stories, but it seems odd that people would all be together in both levels, but would sometimes be completely different. I mean, the 2 kids have completely unrelated, or have to be completely unrelated in the other levels where they are married. and sometimes fairly similar. And then she's, I guess, a too long didn't read. Desperation Regulators aren't a series, but they are a strange experiment by King. Yeah, no, and I think with Levels of Tower, I see it as more of like there's so many levels that there's difference. Like there might be a level where things are the same in almost everything, but very small differences, and then other levels where things are absolutely different. Well, like in our case, like there's a level of the tower where me and you met, like
elementary
10 years later than we did.
Oh yeah.
Or there's and then there's another level completely where we were brothers. Yeah. That's how I have always interpreted it.
That's what I was going to use an example of, is one for brothers that we actually have an example of, is Book 7 of the Dark Tower. Jake and Eddie are brothers.
Yeah.
Not Henry and Eddie.
That's
Jake
true.
and
That's
Eddie.
true.
They were complete strangers before.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they were quartet once they got into the Dark Tower.
And we also have a few different Jakes, right? Because isn't there one point when we see a Jake and like one of the emailers one time blew our minds because it's like, well, and then pointed out a small detail and said, because of this isn't the same Jake that we've been following the whole time.
Is that the Toadash in Book 5?
When when like Jake sees himself or whatever.
Yeah, because it's the sign at the front of the Manhattan Shop of the Mind is different, and Jake's like, that's different. I don't know how, but it is.
Yeah, so that'd be a completely even though he's doing the same shit.
Mm-hmm.
He quick and he does everything the same. Like he dodges around the UPS guy, but that's a different kid from a different tower, different level of tower.
The author's different on Charlie and the Choo Choo.
Yeah,
Beryl E. Evans for Claudia E. Inez Bachman, or whatever. One argument I have against that is the Rose doesn't exist on multiple levels of the tower. The Rose is on Keystone Earth, and that's it.
I think the Rose is going to go in a lot of cases. Not that it could be affected.
They specifically say in Book 7 that the Rose only exists in one world.
Well, because if the Rose is like a connected, like it's like I'm trying to think of the right word. Like it's a representative of the tower, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like how would I think it would, like, maybe not in the same way. Maybe it can't be affected on every level, but I feel like it's going to be. There's going to be a presence with it on every level of the tower, because if it represents the tower is going to be the through line through everything.
Yeah, because didn't we talk about this before? Is that the Jake that came through back into Roland's world in Book 3 is from Keystone Earth, and the Jake at the end of Book 7 is not from Keystone Earth, and we know that because it's a different level of the tower.
Yeah, I think I
thought that the Rose was only on one level of the tower. I thought they covered that in Book 7.
See, the way I was always interpreted it was that the Rose maybe like is only affected on Keystone Earth. Like it could be destroyed and everything could be destroyed. Whereas like it may be seen somewhere else, but it would almost be like maybe like it was almost like a ghostish type thing to where you might see it, or because it's the tower. Like I've always interpreted it, since it is the tower or representative of the tower, it's going to be a through line through every level because the tower is the linchpin, right? So wouldn't there be like that connection in some way? Like now, I with what you're saying, I've always interpreted that as being that like the Rose that's sitting there that somebody could kick and destroy the fucking universe, like that only exists in Keystone Earth. That's how I always interpreted that. So the one that's in danger is only there. It's not like you've got a million levels of the tower and there's a million Roses in danger. No, there's only the one that's in danger. But I feel like there's probably some force of the Rose on every level of the tower, whatever it might be, in some way, even if it's not in danger.
I could see that. So then at that point, then Keystone Jake is not the one that gets drawn.
No, and that's almost a certainty. I want to say that it was even Chris in Australia, maybe, unless I hate to give credit to the wrong person, but I want to say at one point he's the one that talked to us about that and said that, and kind of blew our minds. 'Cause I think we always just kind of assume that like some of these characters come from Keystone Earth, but then there's and I think he brought up some points as to why Jake is not.
Eddie's also not from Keystone Earth. We know
Eddie's
that because
not
of
true.
The cities.
Yeah.
The city mix up that King did when he was really high writing the first couple books.
Yeah.
With Co-op City, right?
Yeah.
That's how we know Eddie's not.
I can't remember the details, but I do believe it was Christian Australia, and he pointed to us some reasons why from the Jake, the primary Jake that we have in the books is not the Keystone Earth Jake, which is
because if it's the big thing is that if we see Jake from Toadash is different than the Jake that was drawn again in the Demon Circle where Susanna was raped, then it definitely is. If it's a different Jake, then the Jake that we see when we go Toadash is from Keystone Earth, because that's the level of the tower. That's where they're trying to get back to protect the Rose. And if your theory is right, that the Rose can only be damaged on one level and can only be killed in one level, that's the level. That would be Keystone Earth.
Yeah.
So that Jake is Keystone, but does he get drawn then in a different cycle because we see him,
or does he just pick up the books and walk away and nothing ever happens?
Because they don't follow him to the lot. They stay there to see Balazar show up.
Yeah.
So they don't even see if that Jake gets the key. Maybe he goes to the Rose, and since it's the real Rose, it cures his madness, and he forgets all about the tower.
Yeah. And the thing is the other thing is who's to say that Jake that they're following even has the madness, right? Because we're only seeing him from afar. Who's to say the kid just didn't decide it was too nice of a day to go to school and pulled a Ferris Bueller? You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those weird things that it very well could be. Like, there's a lot of assumptions involved, right?
It's unlikely that he would be, French leave from Piper School and not have the madness. I think it would be very far-fetched that Jake Chambers, who's not suffering madness, would ever leave Piper in the middle of exam week. I think it would be far-fetched.
But no, especially the relationship he has with his parents, I don't think that would necessarily be far-fetched.
No, I think the relationship from his parents is what makes it far-fetched, because the big problem there is that, he's non-confrontational until he starts to go mad. He never has a confrontation with his parents until then. I mean, they hardly notice the kid until then.
Yeah.
So I think that he has to have the madness. That's why I like the idea that the Rose cures it, and then he doesn't get drawn.
And if it's another level of towers, though, who's to say it's even exam week? I mean, if it's a different level of tower, wasn't there a possibility that it's
still May? They know that. They know that it's spring and everything like that. They say that when they're in Todash because they have the timeline that starts in Book 5. The whole plot of Book 5 is to defeat the wolves in the Kala, but also defeat the wolves in New York before July 17th, the deadline for when Calvin Tower can sell the Rose. So when they first go Todash, it's May. So they know when it is. But I think that it's safe to say that he doesn't get drawn, at least on this level of the tower.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting thing though. There's a lot of differences that can be had, but I think that's even with it when it comes to Jake, that'd be the example of the fact of like we have a few different Jakes, some that are very very close to the Jake that we have, and then the one at the end that shows us that he's completely different.
Yeah,
he has a completely different life.
Yeah,
different relations of he has a brother, things like that.
And they're great together and everything. They're not truckies, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Jennifer goes on and says, you may have trouble getting a hold of Rage. King had it pulled from publication entirely. That is why you can't find it on ebook. Apparently, at least one of the school shooters claimed it as inspiration. I think your best bet is a used bookstore to find a copy. It looks like if you get the compilation of the 4 Bachman books, it would be less expensive. The version of the single book on Abe starts at $550. And then she says, I don't believe I've ever read this one, but from everything I've heard, it's definitely not worth the price. I get the feeling it isn't worth the shipping cost. If you consider skipping a book in the read through, this is the one that I would suggest. And yeah, I think I might. I still might pull that trigger on that Bachman collection. I feel like that might be the the best thing to do in terms of whatever. Because I don't know if I really want to skip. I think I want to read everything just to kind of see. Because I feel like if nothing else, even if it's not necessarily liked by King, it is still something that he has written, and it is something that would be interesting to see. I don't know. Like, I feel like it has, like, you get an insight from creators through their creations, and it'd be interesting to see, like, what does that tell you about him in that period of time that he was writing, I don't know. It'd be interesting, but well, yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely bouncing around in timelines now with the read through, so it isn't necessarily as pressing as it was back probably when I mentioned this when Jennifer wrote this email, because at the time I was trying to keep it in chronological order, but the Outsider kind of blew that away. So now it's a little bit less pressing. So I'll get to it eventually.
Also, your freaking need for the stand is also playing a part.
Indeed. Chances are, all things considered, I probably will have started the stand by the next episode. By the time we meet up next. I mean, there's a few things. I'm in the middle of another book. Plus, you got, like I said, like Hardcore History coming out. But that'll all be done in about a week or so. So, yeah, I'll probably be on the stand by then. And then from there, we'll retouch on the Outsider and record. Yeah, I think we even promised that we'd be getting an episode. But yeah, it kind of just schedules didn't work out and whatever.
Yeah, some stuff came up. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, we'll get to it though for sure. Then she goes on and says, the feedback you actually asked for. And she says, I've noted that the movie didn't work for me before, but I definitely wouldn't scrap any idea of the project moving forward as a TV show. I'm not allowing myself to have any great expectation for it, but I'm still wanting to see what they do with it. Given what they did with the characters, I would prefer a complete restart. If they start with Wizard and Glass, they might not need to make the decision for a while, I suppose. Cast a young man similar to Idris as Roland, and just don't say if he grows into Idris's version of Roland or not. Unfortunately, whatever they do, the race baiting BS regarding Roland's casting will continue. If they cast a black man, the same people will say the same stupid things. If they cast a white man, some will scream about about changing his race. Others will gloat that the problem with the movie was Idris and that the show is fixing that problem. Ugh. Yeah. You and her had the same word there to end that. Yeah, and it's true, and I have definitely thought about that, unfortunately. But you're definitely right, Jennifer, and you're definitely right in the ugh. So is Peter there, because that is definitely, unfortunately, the truth. So yeah, we'll see though. I'm really hoping here we're going to be seeing some casting news, or at least some news about a potential green light here in the near future. I feel like that's got to be coming fairly quickly. It's just one of those things, like the timing of it, like. It's got to happen here soon or not at all. So we're probably going to hopefully be hearing something here. In my guess would be is if we get to like fall and we haven't heard anything, that's big trouble. Like we should be hearing something before the summer's over.
Yeah.
In my opinion, potentially even castings. Then she goes on and says, I would personally prefer that they go in publication order. I think Wizard and Glass works where it is placed in the series because it explained how Roland became the man that he started at the start of the series. If you start with a teenage Roland who is a fairly stock fantasy protagonist, I don't know if the non-book reading audience will ever accept the bastard he becomes by the start of the main series. Imagine if Jake had deliberately allowed Oy to be sacrificed in order to allow himself to continue to the tower. Which that's an interesting concept in terms of like, you know, if you start him off as younger, like then the audiences are almost going to insert expectations on him of like being your average fantasy protagonist. Whereas like in the books, we had a very good idea by book 4 who Roland was. So, you know, for the way we experienced it was more of like, oh, well, how does he become this guy? You know, whereas this audience now, a watching audience, it's not a reading audience, would be like seeing him from Bright-eyed bushy-tailed Roland. And would they buy that turn?
I imagine they would.
Yeah, that'd be.
I think there's enough in out there in sci-fi and fantasy to show that it's possible. And if Wizard and Glass is done properly, dude, what happens to him? If they tell it all,
here's one thing. They have to tell more though. In my opinion, because I feel like there's more there that we can kind of infer because we know we got with Roland when he was already the bastard.
Yeah.
But I feel like things like the fall of Gilead and there's some other things that have to, in my opinion, have to take place in the show to help get us to Roland book 1. In my opinion.
So I'm a little ashamed to admit this. But I never realized that Jericho Hill was a treachery.
Oh yeah,
it just never clicked. You know, like you read, you listen to the audiobooks. You know, there's sometimes where just something just like you had one, maybe not last book club, but maybe the book club before, where you're just like, dude, that just never resonated with me that was what that was.
Yeah, I can't remember.
It was something I pointed out to you.
Yeah,
and because it seemed like you didn't realize it, and then you're like, yeah, dude, that just never clicked for me.
Yeah,
that was what that was. I can't remember what it was, but there was one for you.
Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, you're right.
That one did never click for me. I was just getting to the part in book 5 where Roland talks about inner monologues about Jericho Hill.
Yeah,
and how Alan was killed by him and Cuthbert, and Jamie was dead.
Yeah,
and all of them were dead except for him and Cuthbert. And there was the part where betrayed by one of their own.
Yeah.
I just went, wait, what?
Yeah.
like it hit me like a lightning bolt. Like, holy shit, that happened to him too?
Yeah.
Like his dad's dead.
Yeah.
He killed his mom.
Yeah.
He watched Susan burn alive.
Yeah. Sees like basically the society that is his reality completely false. That, in my opinion, beyond like even the treachery or whatever, which all that and plus the loss of his friends, that's all important. But I feel like in a way, like
his way of life,
to take the Arthurian knight and remove the empire out from under him and just put him in like a post-apocalyptic. I feel like that's almost more than everything else that happened to Roland, because you remove every, and maybe that's why he is so fixated on the tower, because you've removed literally everything. Not only has he lost everyone he loves, but he's lost like his purpose, really, right? Like if you lose like
his culture,
you lose exactly. So I feel like that's, I don't want to overplay it, but I do feel like that is a really big thing.
That's a huge thing.
Like I feel like
you're not wrong,
because I feel like if that had still existed and stayed, and even if he had lost the people that he lost, I feel like the duty of being like the next king or whatever would have been enough to keep him from becoming the Roland that we see him become. Like the sense of duty or the that continuity of society would help him or whatever. But the fact that goes away too is just it's
well,
you've stripped everything from him. You take everything from him.
And it's like you hear him talking in book 4 when they're about to finish the story, when he finishes the story and they're about to move on from the road to go to the Emerald City, the Emerald Palace, I should say. And he says, what we did in May just set him back a year, maybe 2. But I knew Gilead was going to fall. So the fact that he goes back to Gilead and still fights.
Yeah.
While questing, I'm using air quotes here, guys, questing for the Dark Tower.
Yeah.
And the thing is to remember him. This is another thing that it stuck with me, but I keep forgetting it. Cuthbert and Alan signed up to go to the Dark Tower. So did Jamie DeCurry.
Yeah.
So they signed up to go.
Yeah.
The 4 of them were ready to go to the Dark Tower.
Yeah.
Possibly a 5th. Treachery. Makes me think that's where we're looking. Especially since it's one of their own, because I can't believe that Alan, Cuthbert, or Jamie DeCurry were one of the 3 that betrayed him.
Definitely not Cuthbert.
Absolutely not. Well, he dies with Roland there. I kind of wonder.
I'm just more talking from the fanboy perspective.
I got you.
Don't besmirch my boy there.
I'm not besmirching Cuthbert. You got to remember, I love Cuthbert too. I mean, he's Eddie. He's prequel Eddie. So Eddie's just a little, version 2.0 is obviously a little bit better. But
oh yeah.
Cuthbert never killed a train. All right, deal with it. Mic drop. No, just kidding.
Yeah, but did Eddie ever beat a gunslinger with a slingshot?
Cuthbert never beat a gunslinger with a slingshot.
Well, failed gunslinger.
Yeah, not a gunslinger. There's a big difference there.
Somebody just as talented as one, though.
No.
Yeah.
No.
There's people that fail it that would be just as talented. They just, not enough. Because that's the weird thing is if it's just beating the person, who's to say the dude that was in the place before Court wasn't better or worse?
Court's dad.
No, but who's to say that person's not better or worse? It's like one of those things like, I don't know if we have like a similar thing in our society, like in terms of, like, I'm trying to think like would there be an athlete that had a kid or whatever, but like, just like I would like, it's one of those things that generationally there's a potential that like the person that's doing the training might be like a better, like fighter or a lesser fighter. And then because of that, you'd see like classes of gunslingers that would like ebb and flow a little bit, It's interesting. It's an interesting thought. It did come to me at one point. I think I was just like thinking about like, when it came to like Court, and I was just like, what if his dad is just like a drunkard that just like whatever. It's just it's a kind of a cool thing for the universe, in my opinion. Like it's one of those cool things where it's just like it'll never get exposed in the book, it'll never get talked about, but it's one of those things that with the universe that King built, it's like that would be a reality.
Also, he never does that to Jonas, who's the only failed gunslinger in the Big Coffin Hunters. He does that to DePape, not a failed gunslinger. No, he never beats a gunslinger. But Eddie does show his stripes. Eddie is a full-on gunslinger. You know this. You know all that he's done. So, comparing the accomplishments, Cuthbert has a long way to go to catch up to Eddie. All right, I'll say it. If you guys want to come at me, go ahead.
I was about to say I'd flip that statement myself, but
no. The thing is that Eddie gets a lot closer to the tower than Cuthbert ever does.
Yeah, but Eddie's not fighting a freaking civil war that, he's on the front lines of the last battle.
That's true.
Either.
It's true. No, it's true. I'm not gonna besmirch Cuthbert that far and say that. But to say that Cuthbert is, I don't know.
I love these tangents.
Suddenly
now we're debating Cuthbert versus
Well, if we're just
I
debating,
almost called him
if we're
Aaron,
just
by the way.
debating, if we're just debating single accomplishments, I mean, the fact that Eddie, untrained, fought at Balazar's naked. Roland himself claims that several times. That's one of the hardest things to do is for a man to fight naked.
Yeah.
So that alone, not to mention outsmarting Blaine, thinking around corners. I love Cuthbert. Don't get me wrong.
You know, Cuthbert beat Blaine just as easily, right?
I don't think so.
I think so.
I don't think so.
It's the same dude. He's got the same personality. He's this guy. He's the kind of guy that would come up with some stupid ass fucking joke that would drive fucking Blaine crazy the same way.
Know.
I do.
I don't know.
I do. Think about his personality in book 4, man. He is the same. Like there may be things that Eddie has and that he doesn't, and vice versa. But I feel like that is like one of those through threads that's there. You know, I feel like Cuthbert would be the one. I mean, it may be a different joke or whatever. But like, I feel like
it would be definitely a mid-world joke.
Yeah, it'd probably be a
New
little
York
bit
joke.
Exactly.
I couldn't see him asking what's green and lives at the bottom of the ocean. I'd love to see Cuthbert explain that. Moby Snot.
And then Jennifer goes on and says, even if King had written him turning into a person that did that, we'd be horrified that the young man that we first met could go so dark. Which is, yeah, and I think that's true. I really think using Jake as an example does put it in perspective of why it might be hard for an audience to follow Roland from a more wholesome area to the dude that will eventually massacre a town. I could see what she's saying. Like that would be a tougher sell, and it isn't for us because we're just like, well, we know who Roland is, we know who he's going to become. But for someone that's 100% fresh, that might be a hard thing for them to buy.
That's if the show ever gets there. I mean, it would be definitely a shock treatment.
Yeah.
To the fans of the show and the movie coming into the book series. You know, maybe the movie didn't convince them to read the books, but the TV series goes, okay,
yeah, might
let me come in and read this book, and they'll be like, damn, this dude is dark.
But if they don't, and they just go straight book 4, and then the next season is book 1, and he drops Jake, no fucking way audiences follow that. There's no chance. An untarnished audience, an audience that doesn't know the books. That'll be a really hard. Like I said, they need to add more in there. They need to make sure we see the fall of Jericho Hill. They need to make sure we see more of his backstory to complete the picture, and then put us into book 1. And I think then audiences might be able to follow it. Yeah. It'll still be hard though. Like ultimately it is, like Jennifer's right. I think it is easier for us because we met him as a bastard and then went back to him and went, oh shit, he used to be a normal human being with a functioning heart. And you know, he is.
No.
He is.
No.
He is. He's fallen in love with a freaking kid and like putting their entire mission at risk because he's like like how human is that? That's like the most like that's the kind of thing that Roland in books 1 through 3 would never have done. You know, he has his little fling with Allie, but it's never at the expense of what he's doing.
Yeah, she even talks about him moving on, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm going. Don't even try to talk me out of it."
Yeah. So it is. Yeah, it'll be an interesting thing, and maybe it might even be something that we end up when we get listeners. We might have people that'll jump on because of the show, and we might be able to get some first hand accounts of this kind of stuff, and just be getting some angry emails of people like, "This is bullshit," you know, which would be really funny because then we'll have to think back to this and go, Jennifer, she
called it.
She was onto it way back before the show was even greenlit. Then she goes on and says, I think that that is where the non-book audience will be with Roland if we start with Wizard and Glass. I'm mostly concerned that in the end, the show would have to drastically change Roland's character in order to accommodate that audience. If the TV show is also a sequel, I don't have an issue with the character being slightly less dark. I still think that the moment that curses Roland to relive the cycle is deliberately allowing Jake to die. So if they intend this to be the last cycle, they'd have to find a way for him to make another choice there, which is definitely a true statement for sure. And what do you think on that? Do you think, because that does spark the other conversations, do you like, we've talked about things like, do we want it to be a reboot stuff? Okay, let's just say, even if it is a reboot, would you want it to be the same cycle of the book, or would you want it to be the final cycle of the book where you actually see him move towards redemption?
I'm with you on this one. You made that argument a year and a half ago. I want movie and TV people to experience what I did.
The same thing.
Fuck you guys. New cycle.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that because honestly, it is one of those things. Like when we had that interview with Stephen King, where he kind of outlined why he feels the movie failed, and he says that they kind of shied away from the things that made the book great. Like the darkness, the violence, and that kind of stuff. Now, wouldn't that be the ultimate thing to shy away from? Is the ending? Because we've talked about it before. The ending is one of the most definitive things of this series in terms of like one of the things that makes it unique. Like in Game of Thrones, you have the Red Wedding. You have things that people instantly go to and say that defines the series. I would say the Dark Tower, the ending is maybe not as big as like the Red Wedding, but it's a big defining feature of this series.
Oh, yeah.
That and probably Stephen King showing up is probably like the ones that tend to come up quite a bit when like someone's explaining it to someone that doesn't know anything about it. And they're just going to throw some stuff out there. I mean, they're probably not going to throw the ending if they're trying to sell the person on the book, but they're probably at least going to mention the fact that the ending's crazy or whatever. I don't know.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then you have idiots like me who don't read to the ending.
Yeah, for any new listeners that maybe haven't backtracked on that, Peter apparently is one of the types that doesn't read prologues or epilogues. So when it hit the epilogue, he just closed the book and.
It was seriously Roland walking into the Dark Tower, and it's like the end. And I'm like, the fuck is that?
Oh man, I can't believe that.
I went to work or school the next day. I can't remember which one it was.
It would have been work, yeah.
And I walked up to you and I went, dude, what the hell kind of ending was that? You're like, crazy, I know, right? I was like, well, they didn't tell us what happened. You're like, what?
Yeah, like, tell me exactly what you saw.
I was like, he walked into the tower, and that's where it ended. He's like, didn't you read the epilogue? And I was like, what's an epilogue?
Oh man.
Hey, dude, come on. From what I was coming from before that, you got to give me a break, all right?
See, I always like those kind of things because whether it's like an author's note, or whether it is like a pure on prologue or epilogue, I always love those just because they always feel like maybe even if they're detached, like they're going to give you something, that's like something more for the story. And I'm just always about that. So I always read them. Sometimes I'm like, get to the end of an epilogue. I'm like, oh, well, that wasn't that great. But other times I'm just like, fucking they added so much more to like, just, because a lot of times, usually if I'm that point of the book, like chances are I've enjoyed it. Cause like, I don't give up on books. Well, I guess I do kind of if I don't really like, if a book just isn't getting to me, I will, I'll just stop. I don't force through books necessarily. So if I get to like the end or whatever, like nothing more I'd like than to add a tiny bit more to see like what else is there or whatever. I don't know. And then she goes on, Jennifer goes on and says, however, I won't enjoy the series if the character isn't Roland. And she says, as I felt that the movie version wasn't, he might not allow Jake to die for his cause, but he needs to be tempted. To me, the most important thing about Roland is that he has to be focused on something, that it's because that it's become his life. He drinks water because it's necessary for him to continue towards his goal. He only sleeps because if he doesn't, he will not be able to move forward towards his goal. As I believe I've said earlier, I would prefer that the goal be the tower. This is after the Dark Tower, but I can't handle it being avenging his father, his kingdom, his mother, or himself. The focus, however, is necessary for him to actually be for it actually to be Roland for me, and I could totally see that. I mean, it is definitely like his defining quality in the books for sure. Like Eddie, if you remove like the heroine and the Henry, like suddenly that's not Eddie anymore, like and Roland, that is it. That's the same thing. Like Eddie has his addiction, Roland has his. Like
it's like removing Detta from Susanna.
Yeah. Or
that's part of her.
Or removing the even like I guess that's partially removing Detta, but removing like the shit that happened to her in the South and stuff. Like if you remove that stuff from her, like I feel like in a large way you're gonna lose who she is, because again you would undercut Detta would suddenly maybe either become less realistic and less understandable, or it would get removed altogether, and in that case now you've completely botched the character. So I can definitely see what Jennifer I could definitely see what you're saying.
Absolutely.
So and then she goes on here toward the end of the email, and she's going to give us her 4 favorites. So it is 4 it sounds like from her perspective. I don't know how we got 5. I don't know how we got 4, to be honest. Like it must have been something we read that had like had done a top 4 or something, because like 4 is just such a strange number unless you're doing like a Mount Rushmore, but not one person's mentioned that, so I don't think that's the paradigm we were talking about.
No
so
idea.
Four favorites. She says, I just don't know that is possible. Off the top of my head, 11/22/63, It, The Stand, and Eye of the Dragon, Salem's Lot, The Shining, Talisman, and Black House, Full Dark, No Stars, Skeleton Crew, make my original cut, but if you make me cut it down, and then she goes on.
I was going to say, that's a lot more than 4.
Hey, that's to be fair, though, I think a lot of us had the same thing. Like, I think a lot of us have a hard time narrowing it down. Then she goes on here. She says, if we make her cut it down, she says, The Stand. She says, for as long as most of King's works are, this is the only non-Dark Tower work that is good versus evil on an entirely epic scale. We meet Flag. I read the original ending as following Tolkien's understanding that evil sows the seeds of its own demise, and that extended cut shows that it is never entirely defeated. Which, yeah, I've never actually read the original on extended. I've only read the extended personally. I don't know about you.
Only extended.
Okay, yeah, me too.
Dude,
but
I didn't come to King until after the extended was released, and that's all there is now.
Yeah, but I know what she's talking about. Like, one of the last things seen in it, I'm almost positive wasn't in the original. You know, when it comes to, the hero of the story, there's something with him.
She just said the villain, so you don't confuse me.
Well, I'm going to say hero.
Well, you're wrong.
There's something there with him toward the end that, is probably not in the original that he edited out and got put back in for the extended version, which came out in the early 90s, I think. So, yeah. But, see, that's the weird one of that is, like, I don't even think I don't even think you can get your hands on the original anymore. I don't think that was, like, ever, like, republished to where you could buy one or the other. It's just the one, so. Which is fine, because it's great. Who wants less of The Stand? That's the real question. Then next one she lists is The Eye of the Dragon. She says, this is where I started. I'll always have a spot in it for my heart. In my heart, I wish that Thomas overtaking Flag wasn't a throwaway line in the Dark Tower series. Once it was clear that Flag was in the series, I was waiting so impatiently for Thomas to show up and make an impact on the story. More importantly, I wanted to see his ultimate redemption. And that's definitely one we've talked a little. We've never talked as heavily about Eye of the Dragon as some of the others that we have, like Long Walk. Some of the other ones,
Carry It, The Stand.
No, like in terms of like when people talk about recommendations and stuff.
Yeah,
Black House, Talisman, those were ones that we've talked heavily about. Eye of the Dragon, I think we've kind of mentioned on occasion, but I don't think we've ever got as deep into reading it or whatever. But I mean, ultimately, if you're on the right side and you love Randall Flagg and you want to see him in more, then Eye of the Dragon's a perfect place to go.
Just stop it. Just stop being.
Not terrible, man. He's a great character.
He's a great character, but he's still the bad guy.
Oh, that's like your opinion, man. Okay, next up, she says, It. And she says, I will never forget being so scared by the prologue of this book that I couldn't read it. A few years later, when I tried again, I just loved it. So, yeah, that's definitely one that's very... and what's funny is, like... And I don't think that it's necessarily one to talk, like, I don't think it speaks towards the quality of the other books, but I find it interesting that it's very, very, almost, not unanimous, but widely, it's a lot of the same books being listed on these top lists. And I think that probably speaks more to the strengths of those books, not necessarily the weakness of others. Does that make sense? Like, it's not that Stephen King's other books are so much less, it's just that these ones are generally so good that they're on almost every list.
They're just above, a level above everything else.
Yeah. And then she says, Salem's Lot, Callahan being defeated by his own lack of faith at the very moment of his triumph, maybe my favorite King scene. Does this book continue beyond that? Are there other protagonists? And I mean, from my perspective, I was definitely thrown off by it because I read it after The Dark Tower. So for me, it was just like, oh, wow, like that was an abrupt exit of the one main character that I thought was a lot bigger, and he just wasn't. So... But no, it's true though. Do we really see it the same kind of character arc for anybody else in that book? That's like in terms of like, I mean, we obviously have other characters, but like, are any of them treated with the same kind of like, I don't know, like challenges and stuff beyond like fighting the monsters? I don't know. That's an interesting discussion point for sure.
Yeah.
And then she says 11/22/63, Jack and Sadie. This is such a departure from what I usually love from King, but it works so well. And yes, I'm taking 5 because 4 is impossible. and that's fair. That is definitely fair. And yeah, and I definitely think 11/22/63, man, that is the modern classic. I really feel like that's been on most of the lists too. So
such a good book.
Yeah, it is a great one. And I think I need to I don't know if I've ever reread it. I think I've only read it the once.
What?
If I remember right.
Are you serious?
I think so.
Shame.
I think I've actually gone back and looked at the end of it, like the very tail end, like, JFK / whatever, like the last 10th of the book maybe. But I don't think I've ever gone back and reread the whole thing, which I think it's just one of those things that, like, with everything else, with the reading thing that I'm doing for this, with Dark Tower stuff, with
Mr. Mercedes came out after
Mr. Mercedes has come out, all these other books have come out. I just don't think I've had a chance to really cycle back to it. So really, when I get to it for the read through, is probably going to be my first time rereading, which will be really cool to do.
Wow.
Yeah, you've gone through. I know you've gone through it at least twice.
3 times.
Yeah, I was about to say because you brought it up, and every time you bring it up, I'm just like, oh man, I need to do that again at some point.
Do it now before the stand.
Hey, you go to hell. It's already too late in the year. Usually I started early in the summer. We're midsummer here in Ice 11, so it's probably going to start here before we get to the next episode. Okay, I think we probably have time for one more. So Chris from Chicago, and I do believe this is his first email, and he actually has another one in the bag, but we'll get to it in the future. So Chris from Chicago, this is Tad and Peter. This says, I have started out by saying thank you so much for the podcast, and we definitely thank you for the kind words.
Yeah.
And he says, I have been a King fan since I was about 10 years old and read different seasons. At the time, I was reading a lot of Goosebumps and wanted something a bit more grown up. I think in retrospect, grabbing a Stephen King book was maybe a little bit too grown up for my age then, but it's what my parents had lying around, so I took it and ran with it. And
oh my God, it sounds like Tad.
Yeah, that's almost me to the T. I just wish I wish I would have picked up different seasons instead of The Shining.
Yeah, no shit.
The Shining just got way too much adult stuff that it was never going to be as meaningful to me. As if I would have read different seasons, I think it would have been a lot more impactful and probably would have, I don't know, whatever. But yeah, that's a good one to start with for sure. That's one I have been thinking recently about reading, just as short stories, not even for my read through, because I don't know if I'd want to do an episode on it right now. I'd probably reread it again in the future to do for the thing. But I did think about wanting to read it just because it's been a long time and
different
it's got
seasons.
Some great ones.
Which one's in that?
Apt Pupil, The Body, Shawshank, Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, and there's one other one in there. So it's like the heavy hitter when it comes to movie adaptations.
Mm-hmm. I don't think I've read that one.
Did I say The Body? The Body's in there too. So, which Stand By Me. So, for Hollywood wise, that's definitely a heavy one.
I'm trying to remember which one of the short stories ones that I read. I have it at home.
That's definitely a good one. Yeah, I need to watch Apt Pupil again too. I haven't seen that since it came out. And that one's got Ian McKellen in it as a Nazi, which is like an interesting.
I've never seen it.
Oh, really? I'll have to buy it. It's not in my collection. I'll have to buy it and watch it again. Then I can let you borrow it.
You don't own a movie?
There's some out there I don't own.
What?
There's one or two out there.
One or two.
And then Chris goes on and says, since then I have taken in a lot of his writings, but nothing has compared to the Dark Tower series. It is one of my favorite stories of all time. And he says in parentheses, of any medium, which is definitely,
oh wow,
yeah, that's a good one, and I can't say I would disagree. I think it would compare right up there for me with everything.
It's like
because what else do you have? The only other medium you really have is film and television, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I almost feel is kind of like 2 for 1. Like those are the same medium. I know they're different a little bit, but like not enough to like say television's its own entire medium. So, like, does it compare up there with things like Star Wars, Breaking Bad?
Well, it's it's the question that I asked my wife that I brought up a couple episodes ago. What's your 3 favorite fandoms, and who's your 3 favorite characters from it? And I realized after I did Star Wars, Marvel Cinematic Universe, and what was my third one? Oh, Batman. I realized that, what about Dark Tower? And she's like, yeah, what about Dark Tower? Would that replace one of those 3? Because Star Wars and Marvel are very big heavy hitters for me. I mean, I've been watching Star Wars since I was a kid, and I've always loved, comic book characters. I never got into comic books until Batman, but comic book characters, I was a huge fan of the X-Men. and the Amazing Spider-Man cartoons of the 90s.
Yeah.
And then all the Wolverine and X-Men. Great.
Now,
well, let me.
Hold on. And it's a little bit of a tangent.
Yeah.
But the Spider-Man, the one I grew up watching, I ended up finding out recently it was a cartoon from like the 60s.
Yeah.
Was there a Spider-Man cartoon in the 90s?
Yeah,
or
it was the Amazing Spider-Man. Spider-Man.
No, that's the 60s one.
Yeah. No, there's the one in the 90s. It was only on for 3 or 4 years. It was on.
I'm wondering if they just replayed the one from the 60s, dude. Because I went and looked at stuff on like YouTube and stuff. I'm like, yeah, this is the one I watched as a kid, and I'm like, I always assumed it was in the 90s, but no, it was in the 60s.
No, there was one from the 90s that I watched. It's called The Amazing Spider-Man. The one from the 60s is just Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man is 90s, if I remember right.
I think you might probably go on. What were you going to say?
But like, so it was really hard for me to narrow it down to just my 3 fandoms, but I definitely see where he's coming from with Dark Tower, because, dude, it's awesome. It really is. That's the reason why I'm here every other week talking with you about it, is because it's just such a great series.
Yeah. It's definitely up there for sure. Looks like we haven't done a whole lot with the chat's been kind of quiet, but Jim's been in here. It looks like he's taken off. So good to have you, Jim. Thanks for joining us, and have a good night. Let's see. And then Chris goes on and says, over the years, I've tried to get a number of people hooked on the story to no avail. So not long ago, I turned to the internet. I've only read through the books once. Then I listened through the audiobooks, that's awesome. That's good to know too, just where people are at in terms of finding us, finding the series, like how many times you've read it. Like he's kind of answered some of those questions.
Yeah.
And he says, but when I got the urge to go through it again, I decided to see if there was a podcast on the subject, and I found Tower Palaver.
Hi.
And definitely glad you found us, for sure. And he says, I'm currently making my way through the back catalog, and I'm on the book club episode, The Gunslinger Chapter 2. So, a ways back. And he says,
how long ago was this email?
This one wasn't that far long ago. We're actually getting pretty close to caught up.
Oh,
yeah,
sweet.
Yeah, we are. I actually was almost wondering if we'd actually even get through almost all of our emails today. But
I have one word
our conversation was.
I have one word for you every time you think that. Tangent.
Yeah, it's true. And he says, I can't wait to catch up with the release schedule, but it will take some time as I have an 18-month-old. And he says, I can't wait to start reading the series to him. And that's a noble undertaking for sure.
I actually had a thought about that the other day.
Yeah.
My kid's 5 going on 6.
Yeah. Time to watch Chucky, man. Time to watch Child's Play.
No. Just, no.
Yeah.
But I really
so when I watched it, I turned out fine.
No, you didn't. I really wonder if and when she'll want to start reading. If and when I'll turn her on to Ty King.
Yeah. Eye of the Dragon, man.
Uncle Stevie.
Yeah,
I really thought about it.
I think it's in that age of like 10 to 15 is probably the age, because you got it, like kids are younger, they are generally going to be into more short story stuff or stuff that's geared towards them. Then they're going to start reading themselves. It's going to be short stuff, and they're going to eventually start up into like young adult novels. Like for us, it was like Goosebumps, Animorphs type stuff.
Yeah,
and then from once there, that gets you into that 10 to 15 range, and then from there is usually when they're like, okay, I want to make the dive into adults novels, like. Like not kids stuff anymore.
Should I throw her in and hope that she learns how to swim and just start her off with the stand?
No, I think it's the way to start her off.
Good God, no.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I mean, she just teach her an appreciation of clowns really early.
I'll start reading it to her tonight.
Oh, and then get the Pennywise Funko.
Oh God, my wife would not allow that in the house.
Oh, and then he says, and he goes on and says, on top of many other podcasts I listen to as well. So just along with the fact that why he hasn't reread the series yet. And then he says, I pulled the newcomer questions from the website and have answered them below. Before I get into that, I just want to say what a fantastic job you two are doing. I love the back and forth and the many different viewpoints you discuss. Keep up the great work, and definitely appreciate that again. The kind words we love, always love hearing that, because we say it all the time, but yeah, it's always sometimes feels one way blind unless you guys tell us like that you either like something or don't like something. There's really no way for us to know that necessarily. Like I'm not one to like hound on like looking at our like numbers and stuff and like, oh, our viewers, our listenership dropped off. No, that's just not me. So unless you guys tell us, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to overthink things. So just tell us what you guys like or don't like. We definitely appreciate it. Then he signs off long days and pleasant nights before he gets into the questions here. And he says, the first question, how did you come to reading the Dark Tower series? He says it was something I'd always been interested in, but was way too afraid to jump into something that large. And that actually reminds me of myself. I don't remember if we've talked about it early on in the show, but I don't know how much we've talked about it more recently. But I always kind of, once I realized the Dark Tower was there, it was just like being in a pool with a giant iceberg. It's just like, eventually I'm going to go over and touch it. For a while, I just circled around it with a lot of space between me and it. 'Cause I'm just like, that's a huge undertaking, man. When I'm reading books like The Stand and It and stuff, it's like, how in God's name am I going to read a series from this guy?
Yeah,
you know.
See, Tad didn't wait. He grabbed me by the britches and skipped me once, twice, maybe 3 times across the water, face first into it.
Yeah, because I mean, once I got into it, I was just, I was all in. But it was one of those things like early on where I was just like cognizant of the fact that like this is a big thing. Like, you got to be ready for it. I don't know why. I just always had that mentality.
I think I read 4 novels before you threw me into the Dark Tower.
Yeah.
Because you started me with Salem's Lot. That was the first one I ever read. And then I was like, feed me more. And you're like, well, you're not ready for The Stand yet. I was like, fuck you, I'm not. So that was the second one that I read. And then I read Carrie, and then I read It, and I was like, all right. Holy shit! Like, yeah, I'm ready. And
and by that point you'd read like the big stuff, like the It and The Stand stuff.
Yeah, you're like no, you need to read a couple more. I was like, fuck you, give me the Dark Tower.
Yeah. So then he goes on here, says, then I heard from a friend that had another friend that had read the series and loved it, but hated the ending. So I had to find out for myself. And he said in parentheses, by the way, I could not be more satisfied with the ending myself, which I would agree with for sure. I think I'd even heard a little bit about the ending being disappointing before I read it, and yeah, I love it. I really do. I wouldn't want to see it any other way. I mean, there's this part of me that was like, I'd love to see Roland get redeemed, like when the movies were talking about doing the final time around or whatever. But like, there's part of me that would like that almost as a payoff for the character. Mm-hmm. But for I wouldn't want it in lieu of the ending that we have.
Right.
Like, I would like it as a side dish. Give me another ending in a different way. But I would never be like, if I had a time machine and went back to King as he's writing the last book, I wouldn't want him to write any other way at all. So,
right.
And then the next question, had you read other King books before these? If so, which ones? He says, I'm going to forget some here, but in general, I have liked or loved most or all that I have read of his. Different Seasons, The Stand, Pet Cemetery, Under the Dome. And he says I loved it until the last 150 pages, Desperation, etc. So that's cool. That's definitely an eclectic collection for sure of ones to read. Not in a bad way at all. I always find it interesting the different like King which feathers people have in their hat, because everyone very few people have read them all. So it's always interesting which ones people come to.
It's which levels of the tower they visited.
Yeah, exactly. And then the next question is, what King have you read since finishing the Journey to the Tower? And he says, nothing actually. I'd like to read a variety of things, and I'm currently trying out some old noir crime novels.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's interesting. And see, like me, in general, I sometimes wish I was reading more outside of King. But generally speaking, if I'm outside of King, it's nonfiction. Documentary or autobiographies or history stuff. That's almost exclusively what I read outside of King. So it's just one of those, I would love at some point to dive into some other stuff, but it just, up to this point, it hasn't really happened much.
I just have a hard time spending credits on something like that. I mean, if it's King, it's King. I know what I'm getting there, no matter which book it is. But when it's some of these other books that people have suggested, other series and stuff like that, and even Ready Player One. My brother-in-law is ranting and raving because he finally saw the movie. Yeah. And he's ranting and raving. He's like, it's such a good book. It's one of my all-time favorite books. You got to read it. I know you're such a nerd and you would love it. And I'm just like, that's one of my Audible credits. Yeah. Those are reserved for Cy King.
And see, see, I'm now down to the spot where I used to, last time we talked, I may have been sitting around 5 or 6 credits, but
yeah,
I've been going on spending sprees recently where I'm down to I have 1 in the hopper and that's it.
That's what you said.
So now there's part of me where I'm like, I'm not going to spend that till I get another one. I always want to have one in my back pocket just
in case.
Yeah, because I almost pulled the trigger on Jurassic Park. I was just I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about the original movie, and I was like, man, I haven't read that freaking novel since I was like in sixth grade. So it's like, man, I bet you I'd appreciate it a hell of a lot more now as an adult than I did back then,
Yeah.
So I want to read it again. I almost did. I had it like up on the screen. I was getting ready to purchase, but I was just like,
save the credit.
Like, when's the last time I had 0 credits? Like, it's been years. So I held off. And I'm glad I did, because I've got way too much other stuff to go with.
I get my next credit in 4 days.
Yeah, yours is on the 19th, right? Or 18th? No, 18th. Because
I was hoping it was I realized it should have been the 19th.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I said the next question is the one we posed to people. Did you have to wait for the books to be published over the years, or did you come to the series post 2014? Is that or 2004? I don't know.
I was like, what?
I have it typed right. I just read it wrong. No, actually, I see why I merged it with, because he says I actually started it back in 2013. So see, my mind's merging dates here. I actually started back in 2013, so I was able to binge through it. However, I'm not at all a fast reader, so it took me a couple years. I also read some other books in between, which I think that's totally fine. That's
normal.
Yeah. I think some people, and even myself a little bit, like started to drag a little bit just because like you don't want it to end.
Yeah.
I think if most people, like, if we had like some kind of stat counter, I think most people would end up finding that like their words per minute went significantly down once you got to book 7.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, I'm in the last book now. I can't like read too fast or it'll be over.
Did you ever do that with a book where you look at it and you go, I'm going to finish this book tomorrow night? Not tonight, but tomorrow night.
I would there'd be a lot of times if I like a book a lot that I just start dragging. Like I really will. Like there'll be times I'll like remove myself from the book, even though I want nothing more than to just grab it and like just devour it. But like I'll just like put it down and be like, no, I'm not reading it until tomorrow, or like anymore till tomorrow. And then I'll start to like almost portion it out like I'm a starving person on a raft.
What I used to do is, since we had days off in a row, I would line it up to where my book finishing would be on a day off, because I'd be in a kind of a foul mood if I had finished a book and didn't have something else to read at work. Finish it before going into work, 'cause I used to work nights.
Yeah.
Finish it and then be like, well, now what am I going to read?
Yeah, exactly.
Even if I was really happy with the ending, even if I was very happy, I'd still be like, well, now what?
Yeah, exactly.
Because you do get that feeling, right? Like when you finish a book, you're just like,
oh yeah.
Well, that's done.
You're just like in a daze. Like that's like we're like honestly like I did a like a history of Marvel Comics book, and I read. And once I got done with that, I was just like I spent like almost a week in a daze where I'm just like, and and like times where I spent like an hour or more flipping through Audible, like just trying to find something to jump out at me, and just nothing would. And so it was even one of those things where it's like, for the love of God, I need something to like to go right now, and finally eventually found something, but it took some time. And yeah, so I know what you mean. Then the next one is which the books is your favorite and why? He says, at first I did not like book 4, but after getting through it I loved it.
I swear to God you wrote this email.
I know it is very, very reminiscent of my, and I'm sure he's hearing it. If he's going through our backlog, he's probably just like, man, this Tad guy is like taking all my ideas. And then he says in parentheses, I really do think of all the books as a single story, and as such tend to refer to them by book numbers and not so much by book names, which I think you've probably noticed that we do as well. Every once in a while listeners will chime in and they'll like start talking names, but it's like me and you, most of the show, or even just when we're off mic talking, it's always books, book 1, book 2, book 3.
Yeah.
Like how often do we even say the titles of the books? Like,
yeah, it happens. But
it does happen,
often.
But not as often, for sure. He says, I don't do that with people that I have not read the books, but those that have, I figured they would know where I'm coming from. So yeah, definitely agree with you there. And he said, and then the next one is, who's your favorite character of the series? He says, by far Roland. I half wanted to name my son Roland, but my wife was not a fan.
See, what you do is you do like I did, and you suggest a name, and they go, oh wow, that's a really nice name, and you go, yeah, it just came to me.
Just a random name.
Yeah, they're like, oh well, that's awesome. Why do you want to name our son Eddie?
No, so what you do is you tell, like, if you're having a son, you're like, all right, I have to have my son named Geppetto.
All right.
And then you just like you hold that for like a couple weeks, like just to where your wife's like freaking out, going, oh my God, like he's serious. And then you're like, okay, maybe we can go with Eddie. You know, because then they'll latch on.
It's the way out.
Then they'll latch on to like it's the only way my son's not going to be named Geppetto.
I really hope my wife doesn't listen to this. That's a fantastic idea.
Oh man, yeah, that's.
I'll tell
I
her,
am fiendish.
I'll tell her that I want to name my son Gunther. Gunther.
Yeah, you could do that. I think Geppetto is just a great one, though.
Geppetto. Knowing my wife, she would hear this and not tell me.
Oh.
And then she'll be like, I'll go to her and I'll be like, hey, we're having a boy. Let's name him Geppetto. I really want it to be Geppetto. And she'll be like, okay. And I'll be like, fuck, what do I do? Dad, what do I do? Dad!
I just respond back, my God, red alert, get out of there. Get in the house, run.
I just dive out the window.
Then the next question, did you stall out on the series when reading it the first time? And he says, well, I did. As I stated, I actually read a couple of the books in the middle of the series, with other books in the middle of the series, but it was in fact because I stalled out. It was in fact because I stalled out after book 1 and 2. So that's an interesting place to stall out.
I don't think we've had anyone that's stalled out at book 2 before.
No, it's usually like book 4 or later. I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just an interest. It's definitely an interesting one because that's a new one from my memory recollects. I know there's a lot of people that stalled out in or around book 4, and there's a lot. There's people in 5, 6, 7. I think we've had 5
for me, yeah,
but
4
not
for you.
Yeah, not as much. Not as much in the early parts. But no, that's interesting. And then the next one is, have you reread the series? If so, how many times? He says, I've only been through it twice, once in books and once on audio. Listening to your podcast is taking the place of going through it a third time. I don't know how I feel about that. That's a little, I mean, I don't know, I guess, like, maybe, but don't make that a long-term thing. We definitely want you to be rereading the books.
It's actually along the lines of what I was doing is just kind of, talking on Dark Tower Palaver, and I started noticing there was too many moments where I was going, right? That's what happened, right?
Yeah.
I can't remember. And then I was like, okay, screw this. It's time to go down the beam again.
Yeah, indeed. It looks like Cody just joined us in the chat, or well, if he's still here. Dude, the counter thing on my side is like, I don't think it's right most of the time. It shows I still only have one, but last couple times that we've been doing this, I'll like say that we're like, there's no one in here, and then people will chime in and go, oh no, I'm in here. It's like, oh, okay, I guess the counter's wrong. But yeah.
I was just say, did it go up? Because I had closed mine out accidentally.
It might. It's still at 1 now, but
because I'm back in now.
Looks like Cody says he took his son to see Solo for his birthday. That's awesome. Hope he and you liked it. I certainly did. I thought it was a fun movie for sure.
I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, you of course would.
Of course I would.
Although I still maintain that should have been called Solo or Han and Chewie. Should have been the name of the movie.
Should have.
Yeah, but I won't get any disagreement from you on that. Then the next question is, most emotional that the series made you while reading it? Could be sadness, excitement, joy, or anything in between. And he says, I'm pretty sure I choked up a little bit when Jake and Eddie passed. I was shocked by Eddie's killing and actually had to set the book down for a day before continuing on. And Peter, I know you didn't set it down for a day, but I certainly know you hurled it across the room.
Sure did.
I don't know if I've ever had a violent outburst on a book before, necessarily.
Did I ever tell you what happened for me doing that?
No.
I put a hole in the wall.
Oh, yeah?
I was living downstairs in my parents' basement, which was not finished yet, so we just had sheetrock up, was it? Yeah, I totally put a hole. Because I had my own book 7 at that time. I bought that one. It wasn't yours. I bought hardcover.
The hardcover one. Yeah, I remember you had that.
Yeah. I still have it. It still
you still do?
It still has like the dent in the spine.
Oh, so you don't have a soft cover of 7?
Nope.
Interesting. I thought you did, but
no.
Probably just thinking of mine.
Well, I never went back and rebought books. I bought the ones.
Yeah.
I mean, I found 1, 2, 3, 4. No, 1, 2, 3, and 5. Remember I found them in a thrift shop.
Yeah.
And I got all of those for like $3, I think was the total that I paid for all of those.
Yeah.
And then book 7 and book 4 I bought from Barnes and Noble.
Oh, okay.
And book 7 was only in hardcover. They had
because
it was too new. And so when that happened, I hurled it. And
so you probably bought it before you were ready to read it because like with the timeline of when you started reading, like you should have got to book 7. The soft cover should have been out. So chances are you probably went out to buy it because you knew you wanted all the books, right?
I bought book 6 and I bought book 7 at the same time, and it was when I was in book 5.
Yeah.
And
so right in like that 8-month window between hardcover and softcover for book 7.
And so I still to this day have no idea what happened to my book 6. I remember, I don't even remember what the cover was and everything. Yeah. But
I want to say that you, if I remember back at that time, I want to say you had lent it to someone and then didn't get it back because you were telling me because there was a reason you wanted to like borrow mine, right?
Yeah, I ended up borrowing.
I want to say it was a friend of yours that you got into it. He was fairly into it, but I think he kind of petered out right there toward the end, and he probably never got book 7. He just stalled out on book 6.
I actually think, and then I actually ended up losing him as a friend. I think is what it was, and then he got into some trouble and he ended up moving back east.
Oh,
I know who you're talking about.
Gone and Lost Forever. I think I know who it is too, but in terms of like, I have something in mind of who it might be, but yeah. So that's definitely. I've never had an outburst on a book necessarily, but yeah, I could definitely see why it happens. It just has never happened to me as of yet. The next question is, what did you think of the movie? And then in parentheses, don't be ashamed to give your honest opinion. We have people on all sides and are welcome to all. And he said, oh, snap, so terrible. I truly feel like there had to have been a major editing choice that killed it. I love both leads, and the kid did a great job, but some of the dialogue was terrible. And don't get me started on how a bullet that was shot straight somehow traveled slower than one that was shot shot not only second. So I guess I can see what he's saying there when like the bullet like when he bounces the other bullet off to hit the other one to change its course, like how would the second bullet catch up to the first bullet if that one's just on a straight line? Like that's some JFK's type stuff there. Dallas.
Holy shit, I didn't even think about it.
I've never really thought about it, no. But yeah, it makes total sense. Like the how much energy would be displaced by a ricochet would slow it down.
Should have shot the ricochet first.
Yeah.
That would have made sense.
Never thought about it, but yeah.
Wow.
But had to ricochet off another object. And he says, I may have gone in with too high of hopes, but it failed me on every level. And I will say, I think that's, if nothing else, that's, I think, something we helped people with going in. I think we all kind of checked expectations with the show. And if you're going through and listening to all the backlog, you will have heard it all and maybe have different, like, or you'd at least get an idea of where we were at emotionally and mentally going into it.
Yeah.
And he says, and in parentheses, if I also don't say so myself, I am pretty good about realizing that a movie has to be different than the book it's based off of. I also feel that I can still admit when something is not good, but still enjoy it as entertainment. And then he says in parentheses, Wolverine 2013.
Yeah.
Then the next question, do you have any cool stories about reading the series? It says not particularly, only that I fondly remember one Christmas traveling back to my hometown and binge reading the 4th book on a 5-hour train ride in the middle of the night. I still think about the series every time I'm on a train period now. That's great. Now, imagine if you were reading book 3 and 4 on a train. That'd be fun. And then the last question is, if you were recommending the series to someone who didn't have the first clue about them, how would you explain the series? And I love this one. This puts everyone on the spot. Yeah. And he says that as briefly as possible, an elevator pitch, some might call it. I have in fact recommended it to a couple of people and tell them it's, and then in quotes here, nothing like nothing like what they think it's going to be from King. It's a multidimensional Western fantasy with ties to our world. And honestly, for a single sentence elevator pitch, that's probably one of the better ones I've ever heard, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure.
And then that's then he says, P.S. I don't know if at this point you're still reading all emails sent in on the podcast, but if so, I think I'm going to have to start to at least listen to the email section of the new episodes. It might take me a bit longer to catch up. Yeah, if you're back around chapter 2 of book 1, that probably puts you at least a year behind, if not further.
Yeah, a little bit further, because last year was so devoted to the film.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm sure you'll catch up with us at some point, and you'll hear your email.
Hi, Chris.
Yeah, and another Chris too. Now I will say, I do remember he didn't give us any distinction on in this first email. It was only his second one where he mentioned where he's from to give us like whatever. Because at first, like when I was typing this in originally when he sent it, it was just Chris, and I was just like, oh no, oh no, just a blank Chris. We have so many Chris's. So that's it for that, and that'll probably do us in for the episode. Got through a couple bigger emails there, which is good. And yeah, we got a little bit, a few more to do in the future here. But yeah, we'll sign off now with we'll close off the show here and just remind you to subscribe to us on iTunes. You can stream us on Stitcher. You can find the show notes with all the things we talked about on darktowerpalaver.com. And please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes if you could be so kind. And also, if you want to join the Palaver, Peter can tell you how.
Best way to reach us is through email. It's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. You can find us on social media through Facebook. It's facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. And follow us on the Twitter. It's @darktowerpod. That's @darktowerpod. Like Tad said, we have shows on YouTube. You can find us on youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. We have old roundtables on there, plus we have live book clubs. Those don't stay up because of copyright issues. And then also you can check out live roundtables like tonight. Like right now, Tad's typing a message to Chris, right?
No, to Cody.
Cody, sorry.
Cody,
wrong C name.
Yeah, talking about Solo there. Yeah, I'm unfortunately probably not going to get any more movies. And me as not being a big Solo fan, I want two more, but we probably aren't going to get it. So sad times. But yeah, that'll do us up for this episode. So we will sign off as we always say. Long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks.
All right, and yeah, we're a few people joined us. I think Cody might still be in here, but thanks for joining us. Cody says, as a Dark Tower fan, we know how to hold out with optimism. Yeah, that's true, but I just it's a bummer. I really feel like they should have known that like Solo, like, because I feel like no matter what, if they were trying to, because I feel like what they were trying to do is flip from the December dates back to the May dates, and I feel like no matter what, the first one that you flip back was always going to get hurt a little bit because of a quick turnaround. So I really wish they wouldn't judge this one so harshly with its like quote unquote like failure of a box office, because like, dude, like so far you've trained fans now for what, 3 years to wait that Christmas you have a new Star Wars movie. So for this one to jump back, and then now that you bring JJ back for episode 9 and he's moving that one to December, it's like, this is just going to be this weird, we're not back to May now, basically. Yeah. And I feel like they're going to abandon the May thing altogether. So I appreciated it a lot. I loved the tail end of it. Loved some of the threads they threw out there. Would really love to see more, but yeah, and like, honestly, I'm a huge fan of Jabba the Hutt. He's probably one of my top 5 favorite characters of the show and of the movie. And I would love nothing more than to see all of the Jabba Han Solo stuff, but it's just, it's probably not going to happen, unfortunately. But yeah, you're right. We can always be optimistic that we can see it at some point, but not hold my breath for any time soon. But yeah, Cody, thank you for your email recently. We'll definitely get to it in the future. And thanks for joining us, as well as anyone else that did. I think Jim was here earlier. We had the numbers pop a few times, so there's probably some people that just joined in to listen and didn't really speak up, which I guess is all right too. And I've done that with like live shows, or like I'll just turn it on where it's like, rather than listening in the future when it comes on podcasts, I'm listening to it now while I'm doing something, working, or playing a video game or something. So I'm not chatting or whatever. So some people probably did that, maybe doing yard work or something too. There's some people that do that. But yeah, so thanks for everyone that joined us, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for hitting us up on the live stream.
Yeah, see you guys.
See ya.